Good morning, committee, and welcome to members of the public joining us today, both in person and online. This is the 15th of June 2023 meeting of the Western and Southern Area Planning Committee, which is one of the three area-based planning committees of the Dorset Council. Our area of remit covers the previous Weymouth and Portland Borough Council and most of the previous West Dorset District Council areas. The Planning Committee is not a public meeting, but a meeting to which the public are invited. All attendees must comply with the ruling of the Chair. They must not interrupt the meeting or cause undue disturbance. To support this, please switch off your mobile phones for the duration of the meeting, which I've just done. Members of the public are allowed to record or film any part of the meeting. However, they should conform to the protocol for filming and audio recording of public council meetings. Note not distract the proceedings. Those filming should only focus upon those directly involved in the conduct of the meeting. The meeting is also being live streamed, and a copy of the recording will be available to view on the council website after the meeting. No fire alarm test is expected. If the fire alarm sounds, can all present leave the building as quickly as possible by way of the closest exit and follow the directions to the nearest assembly point away from the civic offices. Public amenities can be located in the foyer of County Hall, adjacent to the entrance. Members of the public who have given advance notice of their wish to speak on an application will be invited to address the committee for a maximum of 3 minutes. No material is to be circulated to members of the committee. For the benefit of the public, my name is Councillor David Shortell, Chairman of this Area Planning Committee, and my Vice Chair is Councillor Jean Dunseth. Good morning, Jean.
Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning to you. To introduce other members of the committee, Councillor Dave Burwell. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning to you. Councillor Kelvin Clayton. Good morning, Kelvin. Good morning. Councillor Susan Cocking. Good morning, Susan. Good morning. Councillor Nick Arling. Good morning, Nick. Good morning to you. Councillor Paul Kimber. Good morning, Paul. Good morning to you. Councillor Louis O'Leary. Good morning, Louis. Councillor Mary Penfold. Councillor Kate Weller. Good morning, Kate. Good morning, Kate. Councillor Sarah Williams. Good morning, Sarah. Good morning to you. And Councillor John Worth. Good morning, John. Good morning. Councillor Mary Penfold will be joining us shortly. She's been delayed. Officers involved in the meeting include Anne Collins, Area Manager, Western and Southern Team, Hannah Massey, Lawyer, Regulatory, Mike Garrity, Head of Planning, good morning, Mike, Head of Katrina Trevitt, Development Management. She might not be here. Yes, you are. Good. Matthew Pokin-Hawkes and James Litton-Trevors, Lead Project Officers. Elaine Tibble, Senior Democratic Services. And Josh Kennedy, Democratic Services Apprentice. Good morning to you both. Right, we're going to the agenda, and we'll take item 1 on the agenda to confirm any apologies for absence.
Thanks. So we have no apologies for absence today, Chair.
As I mentioned, Councillor Mary Penfold will be joining us shortly. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Does any member have any declaration of pecuniary or other conflict of interest, bias or predetermination regarding any item on the agenda? Councillor Weller.
Thank you, Chair. Item G on the agenda. Until recently, I was the chairman of the Weymouth and Portland District Scouts. I've recently retired. Had I not done so, I still would not have had a pecuniary interest, but in the interests of caution, I'd just like to declare that I have had an interest in this up until now. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is just for clarity. Also, item 5G, the Scout Hut and Granbury Close. I sat as chairman of the Chickle Town Council Planning Committee, but at the start of the meeting, I declared that I wouldn't take any part in the discussion or vote on this item, as I suspected it would come before the committee. So that's just for clarity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Leary.
Councillor O'Leary. Oh, sorry.
Councillor Baldwin.
Councillor Burwell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On items 5A, B and C, they've been heard by Bridport Planning Committee, of which I'm chair. When these applications were heard, I left the room and did not take part in the debate or vote. I have an open mind on these applications and accordingly, I will be taking part in the meeting this morning when these applications are heard. Thank you.
That's perfectly in order, Councillor Burwell.
Councillor Clayton.
Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, likewise, I'm on the Bridport Town Council Planning Committee, but when the items 5A, B and C were heard, I did not take part in the debate nor voted. So that's okay for item 5C. However, for items 5A and 5B, I have been advised by our legal officer that because my own personal property borders the development site, that I should not take part in the debate and leave the room, I think. So with your permission, I will go into the members' room and listen to the debate. Is that okay? Thank you.
Yeah, that's all in order, and you'll be participating in C. Is that correct?
I will, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just for clarity, items 5D and E, from 2017 to 2019, I was the Dorset County Councillor for the Linden Lee Division, and Winterbourne Farringdon Group Parish Council came under my remit. However, as the Dorset County Councillor, whilst I recall many a heated debate in their meetings about Wickham, it didn't come under my remit as Dorset County Council was not planning, so I have no baggage to bring to this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor, and that's all in order.
Williams.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. For clarity, I'm a member of Bridport Town Council, but am no longer on the planning committee, and so therefore I've got have not been any discussion regarding 5A, B or C.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Dunseith.
Thank you, Chairman. I have made comments about item 5G, so I will be leaving the room when that comes up. Thank you.
Thank you. That's in order. And that will be for the last item on the agenda, and I will be seeking a vice chairman just for that one item. Thank you. Is there any further declarations of pecuniary interest? Thank you. Committee will now take item 3 on the agenda, confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of May 2023. Has all members received a copy of those minutes? Okay. If members are content, I will sign those minutes as a true record of what took place. Item 4 on the agenda is public participation. Only members of the public who have registered to speak on an application will be invited to address the committee. The order of speaking will normally be the first three in an objection and the first three in support, including the applicant or agent. If a ward councillor who is not a member of the committee wishes to address the meeting, they will be allowed 3 minutes to do so. Neither the objectors or supporters will normally be questioned except to clarify a point of fact by the chairman. All written statements received by Democratic Services have been passed to members prior to this meeting. Can I confirm with the committee that you've all received the copy of the update report released and sent to you last night? Okay. Okay, we'll now take item 5 on the agenda, planning applications. We have 7 planning applications before us today for consideration. A comfortable break of 5 or 10 minutes will be taken as when is requested. Councillor Clayton is retired. Briefly, for item 5A. 5A is an application number 1D11002012, Southwest Quadrant, St Michael's Trading Estate, Bridport. And that's for the developed land by the erection of 83 dwellings, consisting of 48 houses and 35 apartments, new and refurbished commercial floor space, associated car parking and new vehicle and pedestrian access following demolition of some commercial units, and makes spares to flood wall immediately west of the Tower building. The case officer for this particular item is Matthew Pokenhall, and I'll hand over to you, Matthew, for your report.
Thank you, Chair. This is a historic planning application for outline planning permission at St Michael's Trading Estate, in that it has come before the former West Dorset District Council a couple of times before, most recently in 2007, and a decision has never been issued. The application being reported to this committee, it's being reported to committee because of the change in the Section 106 agreement, which was agreed at the last planning committee, and for the subsequent adoption of the Bridport neighbourhood plan and newer version of the NPPF. So this is a full report, and you've got the details within the officer's report as well. So the site is on the southwest of Bridport. It comprises a majority of the Brid 5 site allocation within the local plan, excluding the northeast corner of the site, which is item 5B on the agenda, known as the Lilliput buildings. It also includes areas to the west of the River Brit, known as St Michael's Island. It is allocated in the Dorset local plan for mixed-use development, and there are a series of criteria here for its regeneration. This plan shows the aerial view of the trading estate. It's mostly brownfield, apart from a small strip along the river, and St Michael's Island. It is located in the town centre next to the bus station, the police station, St Michael's Lane here with the Rope Walks car park, and the town centre. So it's very well connected in good walking distance of local facilities. And yes, it is. You can see it is previously developed land, and you've got the orientation of the buildings here running from east to west, which reflects the former historic use of the trading estate for the rope and cordage industry with the former rope walks. This shows some of the constraints. The site is within the defined development boundary. It is entirely within the Bridport Conservation Area, forming much of the southwest quadrant area. It includes a number of statutory listed buildings. These are shown in orange on the plan, and locally listed buildings, which are shown in light blue. As I said, it's in the Brid 5 allocation in the local plan. It falls within area of outstanding natural beauty. There's areas of contaminated land, which you would expect, and there's parts of surface water drainage and flood zones 1 and 2 across the site, You can see here in red, they're the footpaths surrounding the site, again, just showing that connection into the open space to the west. And now looking at the listed buildings within the application site. This building here is 40 St Michael's Lane. This is a small part of this building. The southern wing falls within the application site of this outline application. The rest falls within the item 5B on the agenda. And this is the building where, after the first planning committee, I think in 2012, the listing description was extended, which meant that the application needed to come back to committee in 2017. The other buildings just noted on here are locally listed buildings. They're non-designated heritage assets. You have the auction house and tin sheds, the Stover building, Northlight building, the Tarring block, the Tower building, and the red brick building here in the southwest corner. They are in varying states of repair, which we'll see from the photos I'm about to go through. And then outside of the site, there are a number of other listed buildings and non-designated heritage assets as well. I won't go through all of these, but they are covered in detail in the report. And just to summarise, they are predominantly located on St Michael's Lane, the eastern boundary of the site, and on the other side of the road. So just to go through some photos of the site, it's important to understand the condition of some of the buildings and how the site appears at the present day. So this is looking at the northwest corner of the site, and we're looking at the tin sheds here. That is one of the non-designated heritage assets on the site. It's no longer used at the moment. It's in a poor state of disrepair. These views look towards the rear of the Lilliput Lane buildings, just outside of this outline planning application boundary, and you have the auction house, which is also a non-designated heritage asset within the site. As I go through these images, you can see the kind of historic character coming out from the site. So this is one of the former rope walks within the site. You get a dense street pattern formed by these industrial buildings across the site, which have been extended over the years. So this is actually the south wing of the listed building, the only part that falls within the application site. And again, this is a view of the current Stover building proposed to be demolished. In the 27 report, it talked about a trick factory. This is where the trick factory was, and it was a skate park. It's no longer in operation. These are site photos within the centre of the site. Again, you can see that character of tight-knit streets, the former rope walks, and the scale of the buildings ranging between 1 and 3 stories. This is the Snips, which is a hairdressers on the site, and there are a variety of different uses across the site. You've got antiques dealers, there's a record store, and various other kind of light industrial uses. So that's again looking at Snips, and this building here is a 3-storey apartment building, residential, outside of the application site, but adjacent to it. And again, that's just looking down the road with looking up St Michael's Lane. You can see the existing residential building there on the side of the application site. And moving further down the road, you've got this building here, which is another non-designated heritage asset within the application site. Photo 5 is the rear of that building. Again, it is in a very poor state of disrepair. And further down the road are some other non-designated heritage assets outside the site. So there are a lot of heritage constraints in and outside this application site. This is the southern part of the site, the tower buildings where the record store is, and the notable tower on the building, which forms the highest part of the current trading estate. And as you walk into the site from this southern area, you walk past the river wall, and the Tarring block here, which is also a non-designated heritage asset. So we're now in the southwest corner of the site, and you can see here the red brick building, which is a cafe, a premises, and used as an occasional venue as well. And the relationship with the river, which is in, not the best condition as you would expect by a historic industrial estate. And there's the existing river wall here beneath the tower building. So that forms part of the application site, the improvements to that river wall. And finally, just on looking at St Michael's Lane itself, just showing this for context, although number 40 the main building does fall outside of the application site, it's important to consider the impacts on that designated heritage asset nearby, and that's just looking up further up the street towards St Michael's Lane. So you do get that character and the undulating roofscape of those buildings. So turning to the proposed development, this is a outline application with access, layout and scale in detail and appearance and landscaping reserved. It's a mixed-use development for full and partial demolition of some of the existing buildings and construction of 83 dwellings. That's a combination of houses and apartments, and there is refurbishment of existing commercial space on the site. There is an overall net loss of commercial floor space, and you can just see on screen here the summary of the housing mix, ranging from one-bed flats up to 4-bed houses, and then the employment. So that just breaks it down to the detailed application, item 5B, and the current outline application. So you can see the total loss of floor space there, 2,500 square metres, and for this application, and then the overall as well. And the planning history is very detailed. It's covered in the officer's report, but just to summarise this very briefly, it's down the right-hand side here. The application was first submitted in outline in 2012, and it came to committee in 2012, and there was a resolution then of the former West Dorset Development Control Committee to approve planning permission subject to a Section 106 agreement. But before the Section 106 could be finalised, there was an extended listing on one of the buildings on the site. That meant the council couldn't grant planning permission, and the applicant needed to submit an application for listed building consent and detailed planning permission. They did that, and that application came before the West Dorset Development Control Committee in July 2017. Again, there was a resolution to approve, subject to a Section 106 agreement. And now we're here again looking at the same development that was considered by that committee. The only physical changes to the scheme are the affordable housing provision, which has been reduced, and there's also the removal of an off-site contribution towards highway contributions. So they're the changes to the scheme, and we've also got, since then, the Bridport Neighbour Plan, which has been made in 2012, and the updated MPPF. So although it's been considered by committee, it's been fully reassessed in the officer's report, and that's why I'm providing a kind of comprehensive presentation today. This plan just shows the buildings proposed to be demolished. I've talked through some of these in the other slides, but you can see there they include some of the non-designated heritage assets, the listed buildings within the site. They're shown in red, and really that's to facilitate the development, to provide housing on the west and better use of commercial space across the site. So this is the proposed master plan, and just to note that it's access, layout and scale which are fixed, and the landscape and appearance is just shown indicatively on this and would come through as part of the reserved matters. But just to talk through the scheme here, it's broadly divided into two parts, north and south by this new road, Lilliput Lane. On the west side, you have 5 rows of terrace houses which range between 2 and 3 stories, and you have the retained red brick building in the southwest corner. Along the River Brit, there is an area, the river walk, as required by the local plan, and there are improvements to the river wall. On the east side of that road, the buildings shown in grey are proposed buildings, and this is a proposed mixed-use building in place of the former Stover building. That's a 4-storey building with commercial at ground floor, business, light industrial uses, and 3 levels of apartments above. This new building here is known as the St Michael's Lane building. This is a stepped 2- and 3-storey building with apartments. And this is the location of the proposed affordable housing as well. And then around this square, Cattle Market Square, there are a series of commercial buildings, the retained non-designated heritage assets around it, together with what's shown in grey as some small business units. So it's a truly mixed-use development proposed on this site. I'm just going to work through some of the sketches and the plans submitted. So this is an aerial view looking bird's eye from the river across to St Michael's Lane, just to give a character of the scale of the buildings proposed 2 and 3 stories across here, with the houses, terraced houses on the west side, and then the new Stover building within the centre of the site and the St Michael's Lane building. To take you through some of those in a bit more detail, this is an example of the houses, and what we're looking at is the scale and layout of these houses, and the appearance is just shown indicatively, but it does show that it could be similar to existing scale along St Michael's Lane and Foundry Lane, where there are some more modern terraces. This is the St Michael's Lane building, the step 2 3-story building where the affordable housing is proposed. It consists of 12 two-bed homes, 2-bed flats, and 2 one-bed flats. And you can see the scale of the building stepping down relates quite nicely to the undulating roofscape along St Michael's Lane. And the Stover building, this is the 4-story building, and it's got a flexible ground floor here for B1 office, light industrial employment on the ground floor, and then apartments above. So that's actually the 1st and 2nd floor, and that's the 3rd floor there. It takes the inspiration from the existing Stover building in terms of its footprint and scale and bulk in that site, and you can see the elevations there. This is just a sketch of the Cattle Market Square, that kind of commercial core surrounded by those smaller business units and the existing retained buildings. It's a sketch, so the appearance is illustrative, but it gives that impression of the kind of interior employment trading part of the development, and then the exterior, which is more residential in character. And just to show some sections through the site as well, this is looking east to west from the river to St Michael's Lane, and just pointing out the scale of the houses here, 2 to 3-story, the proposed Stover building, 4-story, and St Michael's Lane here at 3 stories. Again, you can see the north to south section here, looking from the police station through the Lilliput Lane buildings outside of the application site to the proposed Stover building and the other buildings on the site. And just to note, the kind of existing landmark on the site is that tower building, and the Stover building would be a similar height to that, but located within the centre of the site. These are, again, some other sections and elevations, just showing the one down St Michael's Lane here, and you can see the kind of variation in existing roofscape. These are existing buildings here, proposed Stover building behind, and the proposed St Michael's Lane building. It takes its character and form from what is existing in that conservation area. Now, looking at the housing mix and affordable housing, what you can see on screen is the proposed housing mix across the outline application, and then below is the phasing and housing delivery. So there's 83 homes in total. There's a good mix of apartments and houses, including 1 to 2-bed flats and houses up to 4 stories. In total, 14 affordable apartments are proposed. That represents 15% across both parts of the applications that outline in the detailed element. And just summarised on the right-hand side there is the change, how that's changed since 2017. And what was resolved at that committee was for 22 affordable units, which represented 24%. It also required all the refurbishment works up front. What we've got before us now is a reduced affordable housing offer of 14 units, of which represents 15%, and there's a revised phasing that goes along with that as well. So overall, there's a reduction in 9 affordable homes, which is a 9% reduction from the last planning committee there, and that's been put forward by the applicant. They prepared a viability assessment which explained the reasoning why the resolution of the last planning committee could not be adhered to. So I'll just come on to the viability here. So we know viability is difficult on this site. That's acknowledged in the allocation and the supporting text, which talks about providing residential to make a viable scheme, and the importance of securing a viable scheme is noted there. The previous planning committee, 2017, the viability assessment was accepted, and circumstances have changed since then, which require a reassessment. So the applicant produced a viability assessment that concluded that 24% affordable, last planning committee, was not viable due to the phasing and the cost of the work. So what was required at the last planning committee was that the refurbishment works were delivered at an early phase along with the affordable housing. So it's front loading those parts of the development. And it also relied on Homes England small sites funding, which ultimately couldn't be secured after the planning committee. So as detailed within the committee report, the council instructed the District Valuer Service to undertake an independent review of the applicant's viability assessment. That did a full audit of the costs and values set out in the applicant's report. And what it concluded was that the proposed scheme was only able to support 7 affordable dwellings across the site. So what we've actually got, the affordable offer of 14, is higher than what the District Valuer Service conclude as viable. And the reason for that is the applicant feels that with the approach of providing all the affordable within one block, the St Michael's Lane building, has efficiencies and means that they can provide a higher number of units, although ideally affordable would be distributed more evenly, pepper-potted across the site. So the proposal is a kind of suboptimal location of that affordable housing, but it results in a higher number of homes overall. So that the viability has been scrutinised by the District Valuer Service, and officers are content that it provides a robust assessment and that affordable housing offer is acceptable. And that's under policy House 1, which is the affordable housing policy. That does allow, just on screen here, allows for acceptance of viability assessments where there are good reasons to bring the development forward. Here there are good reasons to bring the development forward. It's a brownfield site, it's allocated, it will deliver a number of benefits which are summarised in the report. And where viability is accepted where it's needed to make a development viable. The applicant's shown through their assessment and the council's review that the 22 affordable homes previously proposed is not viable. The proposed phasing, so this has been amended since the last planning committee to provide, to make the scheme viable. And what you can see here is the colour-coded phasing of the development. It's fairly complex on how this will work, but you can see that in phase 1 you've got the housing on the west side of the road, which is the market housing, together with some of the employment which is outside of this application. Phase 2 includes the affordable housing block and development around Cattle Market Square, and then you've got the 3 refurbishment phases. That plan kind of hides the complexity of this phasing, and what we've got in this table down here is just a summary of how that would work. And what you can see here on the affordable housing row is that the intention that will be tied through the section 106 is that the affordable housing will need to be started before any homes in phase 1 are occupied. So there's a trigger there that they would need to be started before the market homes are occupied. And it also requires that the affordable housing is ready for occupation before half of the market homes are occupied. So there's a kind of the affordable and market homes are coming forward in tandem there. And you've also got the commercial refurbishment as well, some of which is delivered alongside the residential. So this is just summarising the plan and benefits, which is in the report. And yeah, there are a number of benefits here. The housing, the improved river corridor. There's a biodiversity management plan, which secures biodiversity net gains across the site, and the the refurbishment of employment space as well. So what that does is it creates new opportunities for new businesses and replaces much of those employment areas which aren't lettable and not really performing to their potential. There's also SIL and non-material considerations which aren't required to make the development acceptable, but they're just summarised here for information. So I won't go through all of the kind of considerations here, but this is a summary of the key planning issues. So just in brief, the principle is fully accepted. It's a allocated site. The employment would there would be a net reduction in employment floor space, but there'd actually be a net gain in jobs overall of around 100 jobs, and that's because of the reorganisation of the space and provision of better quality space, which is fit for purpose. The residential I've talked through, again, that is acceptable in principle. The housing mix provides a good mix. The affordable housing, ideally that would be distributed across the site more evenly, but what we've got here is supported by the council's housing enabling team. They note, as mentioned in the report, that there is a high need for 1 and 2 bedroom flats. So the 14 homes are meeting a high need there. And in terms of heritage, there is identified in the report less than substantial harm. That harm is to the Bridport conservation area and through the demolition of 2 non-designated heritage assets within the site, the tin sheds and the Stover building. So what that engages is a public benefits test and the weighing of public benefits against that heritage harm, and then a kind of general balancing against the non-designated heritage assets. So that I won't go through that in detail now, but it is in the report, and there are a number of benefits which officers conclude outweighs that limited, less than substantial harm to those buildings. AONB, yes, it's in the AONB, but it's entirely appropriate within this urban setting. The design and layout is informed by the conservation area. It's judged in harmony with the surrounding area. In terms of residential amenity, we have got mixed-use buildings within this proposed development. There's a Stover building which has commercial on the ground floor, residential above. So officers have looked at those relationships between employment and residential, and there are conditions to protect against noise and disturbance on those residents. The proposed commercial uses would be B1, so they're offices, light industrial, those types of uses are entirely appropriate within a town centre location and very common in Bridport town centre above, below residential apartments. There's flood risk and drainage, which is judged to be acceptable subject to conditions. There's been detailed discussions with the Environment Agency about that. There's ground contamination conditions, as you would expect, on the contamination of the site. Highways and parking. Just to note on this, that the previous planning committee, there was a contribution for £8,000 towards off-site highway works. Since the last planning committee, the applicants produced a transport assessment addendum that has been produced at the request of National Highways and the Highways Authority, because it's been such a long time since the last planning committee. There needed to be an update of that evidence base to see whether the off-site contribution was justified. And what that concludes is that the off-site contribution isn't required. That's been agreed with National Highways, but robust travel plans are, and they're there to try and steer owners, occupiers, visitors to more sustainable modes of travel, walking, cycling, really taking advantage of this kind of town centre location. So they're proposed to be secured by condition. Ecology and biodiversity, there are substantial biodiversity net gains on the site, being a brownfield site, and energy efficiency and sustainability. The comments were raised by Bridport Town Council, and there are conditions on energy efficiency and sustainability for BREEAM and renewable energy. And overall, the site is inherently sustainable. It reuses many of the listed buildings, the locally listed buildings on site, and it redevelops a brownfield site. So overall, there are some deficiencies on the application, which you kind of expect with a large scale scheme, so that the distribution of affordable, the reduction in affordable. Some of the apartments on the Stove building won't have private amenity space, and that's summarised in the report. But overall, there are a number of benefits which are judged to outweigh those deficiencies and the heritage harm. So the recommendation is to approve planning permission. This is a recommendation A and B. So the Section 106 would require those 14 affordable homes split 70-30 social affordable rent to shared ownership intermediate. And it would also require the employment buildings phasing as well. So those essential works coming along with that proposed phasing, which I've gone through. There's a number of planning conditions here. I've touched on some of these, and we can come back to them in the discussion. But the key ones are the potential relocation of the tin sheds, a locally listed building, the flood risk conditions, and the residential amenity conditions on the use of the new buildings, and a requirement for plant equipment details to be submitted to reduce potential for disturbance of residents. And part B of the recommendation, the same recommendation, is that if the Section 106 isn't agreed within 6 months or other extended period, plan permission be refused. So that concludes my officer presentation, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Matthew. We've now got a public speaker. I invite Martin Ridley, the applicant, to address the committee. And please speak directly into the microphone. Martin, you have 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, councillors and committee members. These comments apply equally to both of the applications covering St Michael's before you today, so I will not be seeking to speak again under the second item for the listed building. As estate manager at St Michael's, you might expect a biased view from me, but as my comments are based on many years' experience of day-to-day activities on the estate, they are nonetheless valid and useful. They also represent the views of Norman Hayward, the sole owner of the estate and therefore the applicant. The development and regeneration of St Michael's has become a hot topic over the lifetime of this application, with conflicting views and opinions. A healthy debate for some, a frustrating and negative delay for others, including ourselves. However, there is one aspect on which all parties do agree, and that is that St Michael's is not sustainable in its present form. For some parts of the community, the regeneration is more important than the residential, although one can't proceed without the other. As owners and estate managers, we believe the whole application, both the outline and the listed building consent, form part of a much-needed regeneration programme. A detailed commitment to the regeneration of the estate is clearly set out in the design and access statements and the architect's drawings, and as you will have seen, and as mentioned in the officer's report, this now includes a supportive economic evaluation and commercial assessment from the district valuer. The time's right to move forward so we can continue, and I think this is important. Well, it's all important, but this is especially important, honouring the policy that we established 55 years ago of providing affordable commercial trading space, studios and workshops, and in some cases light engineering. We have 86 tenants at the last count, plus 37 co-occupants, with another 12 due to sign up on completion of the reinstatement of the tower building, which was damaged by fire in 2018. Most of these traders are attracted to St Michael's because of its unique location, its atmosphere and its culture. There's nowhere quite like it, as we say in our letterhead. The fact that most of our tenants are or have been seed corn or start-up businesses adds to that richness. But it does give us the added challenge of retaining the long history of the estate while we bring in the new, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as the Americans say. One of the most important documents not mentioned in Matt's report is the Employment, Economic and Regeneration Impact Statement, the ERI. This sets out the provision of the new commercial space, as well as the areas that will be reinstated and brought back into use. And while we do that, there are two key objectives: supporting the diverse mix of businesses we have on the estate and developing the new skills and enhancing employment opportunities. We have emphasised this approach in our extensive conversations with the local community, the Town Council, of course, the Bridport Area Neighbourhood Plan, and a number of community groups, including, of course, our tenants. What we have here is the classic and definitive mixed-use development on a brownfield site and a valuable asset to the community. But as we've said, it's not sustainable in its present form. We believe the St Michael's scheme to be the acceptable face of development in West Dorset. It has always been a one-off opportunity. There is no plan B. We need today to be the day that this scheme finally gets the green light it's been seeking for 20 years. So thank you for your time, Mr Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Ridley. I call on Matthew Pokenhawks to respond with any salient points he may wish to clarify.
No points of clarification, Chair, but endorse the sentiment about the the character of the trading estate and clearly the sustainability of the current the current trading estate with a number of unoccupied buildings not being sustainable.
Thank you very much indeed, Matthew. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? Councillor O'Leary.
Okay, so I didn't have the exact figure to hand in that presentation. So the jobs are based on full-time equivalent jobs. So at the moment, you've got a range of part-time and full-time jobs, and the existing is 131 existing jobs, and the proposed is 225. So there's a net gain there of 94. These are, of course, estimated jobs based on standard figures and multipliers on the existing floor space. So the figure is a net gain of 94 jobs.
Thank you for that. Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair, fellow councillors, and thank you for the report. And I can understand over the years there must have been a lot of negotiating. Where I find difficulties on a technical side is the affordable homes. It came down, and I'm judging by our waiting list is what, 4,200. My question is, should we have done a lot better than getting the affordable homes, given the area that we started from? And I understand the affordability of the estate and the sustainability, but that is the area, and I say that because of the amount of phone calls I get where people asking, what can I do to get housed? So I'm really trying to drill down further on the social housing side.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. I'm going to hand back to Matthew to respond to your question.
So yeah, could we as a council have done better to? The question was around, could we have done better as a council to secure more affordable housing on this site? And really over the years, we've had extensive negotiations on this site with the last planning committee, resolving 22 homes with complicated phasing and front loading of the affordable and the employment space. Unfortunately, what was secured at the last committee is no longer viable, and that has been rigorously assessed by the council's independent viability consultant from the DVS, and that works kind of line by line through all of the costs and values in the applicant's viability assessment. It's a mixed-use scheme, and it's really, really tricky sometimes to get these sites to work in a viable way with the particular aspects of this application, with the heritage, the river wall improvements, and then the really complicated phasing. So we as a council have pushed the applicant through that DVS viability review, and that review actually concluded the scheme's only viable with 7. So we've worked with the applicant to get a scheme here, a recommendation which is acceptable for a higher number of homes, 14 homes. It's below the 35% target, but it is in line with policy, and we feel that's been rigorously assessed by the council.
Councillor Kimber, does that answer your question? Councillor Burwell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It is a technical one. Could I ask the officer on the bottom of page 30? It says the Housing Enabling Team say that there are 252 households who have declared a local connection to the Bridport area. I've got some details here from the Housing Strategy Team that tell me there's 413 houses on the list that are looking, household members that are looking to live in Bridport. And it also says that out of this 413, 215 of them require one-bedroom accommodation. So I think the figures that we have before me that are up to date are rather different to the ones that you've actually got there and have been talking about in your report. It's not a criticism, it's just a query of, why is there such a difference on these numbers? It's over 50% of the housing need in Bridport for one-bedroom accommodation. Now, I don't want that to reflect badly on the scheme itself, because I think I'm potentially in favour of it. But as Councillor Kimber did say, the affordable housing seems to be suffering every time. I understand the financial reasons, and I understand the applicant has put his case forward quite well. But again, we're looking at the wrong type of housing for Bridport, and we've got a neighbourhood plan that supports that. It's also in one block, which the Town Council are not happy about at all, and we feel that it should be peppered around the site. Again, the applicant has given the reasons why, but it does stick in my throat a little bit that we have to accept this every time we get a big scheme come before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burwell. Can I hand back again to James to respond?
Thank you, Councillor. And I have a printout of the report here. I think you're talking on about para 1576, where it's talking about the Housing Enabling Team's comments. Yeah, so I didn't note down all those numbers, so please take me back to them if we need to continue this question. But those figures were from I think February this year, so they are earlier figures, and I think what the figures that you spoke about did show that need for the 1 and 2 beds as well, also being high. Elsewhere in the report, it talks about the number of bids that have been made on affordable homes, and there are a very high number of bids on 1 beds and 2 beds. So there's a very high need for these. And what is proposed are 14 homes, 2 of which are 1 beds with the highest need, and the rest 12 are 2 beds. Yes, there is the highest need for the smallest homes of 1 beds, but there is also a high and important need for 2-bed homes. So the proposed housing, it's lower than the policy target, but it is meeting a high need there, which the Housing Enabling Team accept as a compromise. They raise no objections to the proposal, and yes, ideally there would be a pepper potting of homes across the site, but the approach that's been negotiated with the applicant is for all those homes to be within St Michael's, in the St Michael's Lane building, and that has efficiencies in terms of the management of the block, which allows for that higher number to be provided. Does that answer the question?
Thank you, Matthew. I promise not to call you James again. Does that answer your question, Councillor Burwell?
It sort of answers it, Chair. I'm still frustrated that I've got figures here that are much, much higher than the officer. Obviously, mine are June, so they're up to date. But it does show over 50% of the need is for 1 bedroom, and that we've got nothing like 50% here. And I do understand the economic side of things, but it really is difficult when we go to the trouble of a neighbourhood plan and local plans, and we have to bite the bullet, as it were, on these things for viability. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone? No other technical questions? Before I open the debate, members, may I remind you to direct any questions or remarks through the chair, and I will invite members to speak in turn. I also ask members to introduce themselves and speak directly into the microphone, which should be kept on mute when not speaking to preserve audio quality. So I now open the debate to members. Councillor Ireland, you're the first to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to echo Councillor Bolwell's comments, actually. Mixed tenure in a development is really desirable, and the officer has mentioned that multiple times. But we are where we are, and while the DVS has said, ideally 7 units would make it viable, we're getting double that, so I think we should probably take it. And my own ward, sorry, I didn't introduce myself, Crossways ward, Nick Island. In my own ward, the demand is actually for 3 or 4 bedroom, because most of them are families. But Bridport has a big demand for 1 and 2 bedrooms, so I think we should take what we can get. Having it in one building, not mixed tenure, is not ideal. I guess there's a suspicion that they might skimp on quality. There's a stigma potentially associated with everybody in one building. Dare I say the word ghetto, but I'm assuming it won't be that. So I would like to propose we accept the recommendation of the officer as presented, and there are a couple of updates on the sheet, I think, but including those.
Can I clarify, please, Councillor Ireland, that in fact you are proposing both recommendation A and recommendation B at the same time?
I'm sure I am, but I need to check that. So. Yes, yeah.
Councillor O'Leary.
Can you hear me? Yeah. No, I'd just like to second that proposal by Councillor Ireland. Thank you.
Again, Councillor O'Leary, you are seconding the proposal for both recommendation A and B, yes? Yep. Thank you. Councillor Bowell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a small point. There's an awful lot of paperwork involved with this one. I may have missed it, but I noted that DC Highways say that an outline travel plan should be secured as part of the outline planning permission. Could I just check that that's actually being done? And if I've missed it, I apologise.
That was a question for clarification, so would you use your kindness to answer that?
Yeah, that is a proposed planning condition on the outline to secure those travel plans as recommended by DC Highways and National Highways.
Thank you for that, Chair. Thank you, Officer.
Do we have any other speaker?
Councillor Weller.
Councillor Weller.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This is a sort of chicken and egg, isn't it? And again, I'm talking about affordable housing. Places like Bridport, Weymouth is the same. We attract people ready to retire, and those people want 1 or 2 bedroomed homes, and that's entirely understandable. However, as we provide those needed homes, we are discouraging our young families, and we badly need, for a vibrant community, we need young families. I know that there are lots of family homes within this development, but they're not affordable homes. I'm not going to object to it because the homes are needed, but we do need to be mindful all the time that we need to be looking at areas where we can attract and retain our young people. Hopefully, these people coming into these 14 homes and the other small homes are people who are downsizing, and they're going to free up all those wonderful family homes for our youngsters to stay in the area. And I really just want to make a plea that we remember that whilst we're catering for all us old people, we don't forget that we need young people. That's the only way we can be sustainable, is to have our young families staying here in Dorset, not become a county of old people.
Duly noted, Councillor Well. I'm sure that will be taken on board. Who's next?
Councillor Kimber.
Councillor Kimber.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, fellow councillors. Yes, I'll be supporting this. My criticism is around affordable housing, and as Councillor well eloquently said, with the need for young people. And I think if there's a part of this recommendation that we should minute is we recognise the needs for our young people and to keep them in Dorset. My concern is that we are turning very quickly to we need these support. Now, the jobs on offer, I understand there's about 100 jobs on offer, and that is too good an opportunity to miss. So whilst I criticise one area, I'm absolutely delighted with the jobs on offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Are there any speakers? No. If there's no more deliberation and members are satisfied they've heard the entire presentation debate, we have a proposal and recommendation as laid on the table for recommendations A and B, and I will now take a vote by show of hands. All those in favour of the recommendations? For the benefit of viewers online, that is a unanimous vote by the committee. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we'll proceed now to item 5B on the agenda, application number WDD 16002852, Leadport Buildings, adjoining 40 St Michael's Lane, St Michael's Estate, Bridport, DT63TP, and that's the application for a full planning commission. Covers the redevelopment, including part demolition of a listed and unlisted structure and refurbishment of retaining structures to provide 9 residential units, including refurbishment of 1 existing unit, and B, a net decrease of 47 metres of light industrial floor space in the revised scheme. I now pass back to Matthew Bovenhart to do the presentation for this item. Back to you, Matthew.
So as I touched on the previous presentation, this is for the northeast corner of the trading estate. And you've heard the full presentation on the outline, so I will go through some aspects that are similar in less detail on this one. So there we have the site location again. It's the northeast corner, known as the Lily Putt Buildings, to the rear of 40 St Michael's Lane, and that in blue is the rest of the outline application. Again, it's subject to the same site allocation, and you have the Bridport Neighbour Plan policy as well. This plan just shows the location of that, so of the site. So it's the existing building and buildings to the rear. The same aerial view of the site. This part of the site is fully brownfield site, and looking at the constraints are the same in the wider area, but looking at the site itself, there is the only one heritage asset within the site, and that is number 40 St Michael's Lane, that's grade 2 listed, and this is where the listing description was extended to include the north wing and the south wing. Just to note on this aerial view that those buildings to the northwest of it, they're attached to the listed building, but they do not form part of the listing description and they're not listed. And then we have a number of other heritage assets around the site, around the trading estate and around the site, which have been covered in the earlier report. So just to go through some of the photos here, specific to this site, this is the front of the listed building, and you can't see the wings behind the listed front. And then we're just taking a walk through the north entrance to the site. So this is where you come from the car park and the police station, and this is what you're first greeted with. The police station here And these extended non-listed buildings which attach to the north wing of number 40, St Michael's Lane, they're 1-2 stories. They're in a, as you can see, they haven't got any heritage interest on those parts of the building. As we go, this is looking between the north wing and the south wing of the listed building. And you can see the features here which are of significance in the listing description, and you can see how this space would have been used in the past as a rope walk for the cordage industry. This door is a door that goes through to St Michael's Lane on the other side of the front of the listed building, but at the moment there's no public access through there. So this is just the summary of the proposed development. It is for demolition of those parts of the building to the north and partial demolition of some of the listed building, and then construction of a new build extension to the north. In total, there are 8 homes, of which 8 homes which are new and 1 which is refurbished because there's an existing home there at the moment. The housing mix, it is all 2 beds as part of the proposal. And the refurbishment, and that's the summary. So that overall there's a very small reduction in the amount of commercial floor space, but again, it's been reconfigured to make it work better. I won't touch on the planning history again, but to mention parking, there is 1 space per dwelling, and those spaces would be provided within the outline part of the development, and that would be secured through the phasing of the scheme. This shows the demolitions in a bit more detail. You can see there is a lot going on in the interior of the building, and then this is the existing part which would be demolished to make way for the new extension. That's the upper level, so there's the 2-story element which would also be demolished. Looking at the proposed plans, there are 6 units here which you can see colour-coded, and they provide a mix of unit sizes. These units 1 and 2 would be within the new build part of the building, and units 3, 4, 5 and 6 would be within the retained and refurbished part. And 5 out of 6 of those buildings are below 280 square metres. So it provides a good level of small units suitable for lots of different types of occupiers depending on their space requirements. There's servicing to the rear, and this is the residential access to the north by the police station. Moving up the building, you can see Unit 6 has a split level with space at the top, at the front of the listed building. And then you have the new proposed flats on this extension above the commercial. And you have the 1 current flat, which is refurbished here, and a new flat above in the listed part of the southern wing. And at second floor level, there are just 2 flats, so that you'll see from the elevations, the building steps up towards that north boundary. The roof plan takes its form from the existing roofs along the site. Looking at the elevations, this is the elevation looking at the southern, the northern wing of the listed building. So that identity of that building and the features of historic interest are retained, and you can see here there would be a flat would go in this location, and it really works with the existing building and that's formed. So as you stand down within this formal rope walk, you get a view up, and you get that impression of being in that formal rope walk. But what you don't see, because of the step design, is the taller elements which are located on the north. And there's a lot of detailed design work which went on with Historic England to finesse the proposals here and the design, to which Historic England have no objection subject to conditions. And this is the elevations, and again you can just see that stepped design here, relationship with the police station and other buildings, St Michael's Lane to the rear, and the section going through the commercial on the ground floor with residential above. Some of the detailing, this is a detailed application, so you've got the detailing on the drawings, and there are a number of conditions which control this as well. So it takes, this is the auction house, which is a non-designated heritage asset opposite that police station entrance to the site, and it works quite nicely with that, with the detail on the headers and the windows and the split between the commercial and residential. You aren't given that impression that it is a mixed-use scheme. This is takes an industrial character appropriate for the site and the conservation area. And this is just that a section there showing the northern elevation, so facing towards the police station with the apartments here, and then the existing retained bits of the wings of the building there, and the back of the back elevation of the new homes as well. So this is set behind the homes on St Michael's Lane. Phasing, as we went through in the previous presentation, this part of the site would be within the first phase. It's identified here as the Lilliput buildings, and that is that's a benefit for it being in an early phase because it's a gateway to the site, and it provides that first character as you come into the site, and then this part of the conservation area. The proposals in terms of housing, there's 8 new homes and 1 refurbished, 9 in total. They're all 2-bed. There's no affordable within this. That has been assessed across the outline and detailed application, which we've just gone through. In terms of the employment mix, there is a small reduction in the amount of space, 47 square metres, but it's been reconfigured, and there is that broad mix of unit sizes. The parking is 1-for-1 provided in the outline element. These are the planning benefits mentioned in the officer's report, and just to work through some of the key considerations, I'll just touch on some of the points of key difference, because principle is the same as the outline application. Employment, again, there would be a improvement in quality of that space suitable for modern requirements. Residential is entirely acceptable with the residential amenity conditions that we've got, which again are on plant equipment, on some of the obscure windows to ensure good levels of privacy. The housing mix, it's all 2-bed apartments, so ideally there would be a broader mix, but we appreciate this is a constrained site because of the heritage constraints, and there's limited opportunities there to provide a wide range. So looking across both sites together, there is that broader mix. Affordable housing, I've mentioned. On heritage, the conclusion is that there's no harm to heritage assets, designated or non-heritage or non-designated. Historic England raised no objection. They've been very much involved in the design of the proposal, and there are conditions on design. And to mention as well, there is also a separate application for listed building consent. That's not before planning committee, but that would be in tandem with this proposal as well. The design again is judged to work well with the existing buildings. There's flood risk, ground contamination conditions. Again, National Highways have reviewed the Transport Assessment Addendum, which was submitted as part of this application as well, and the off-site contribution is concluded not to be required. There are biodiversity net gains on this site as well, and there are energy efficiency and sustainability conditions which would secure a good level of sustainability on the site. And again, it's an inherently sustainable development, reusing that listed building, breathing new life into it, and making sure it can be used to its fullest potential. So the recommendation here is for recommendation A and B to approve, subject to, this is where it links the outline and the detailed. So it's for the affordable housing, but for that to be provided within the outline element, and for the refurbishment scheme. So although we've got 2 separate applications here, outline and detailed, the section 106 links those 2 sites and ensures that they come forward in a phased way that delivers the affordable housing and the refurbishments. There's a wide range of conditions here which are summarised in the report, and on amenity you've got the conditions on the use of the buildings, the plant equipment and the obscure glazing. The police have also commented on security and crime, and there's a condition there on secure by design as well for locks, doors, windows on the residential aspect of the site. And on highways, there is the travel plan condition again to encourage use of sustainable modes of transport, making use of cycling, walking, and provision of induction packs to residents. And there's a construction traffic management plan. Part B of the same recommendation is to refuse permission within 6 months or another time, as agreed with planning officers if the Section 106 isn't agreed. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? So, as there's no technical questions, I now open the debate to members. Are there anyone wishing to speak? Councillor O'Leary.
Yep. I'd like to propose the application. Thank you.
Just to clarify again, that is for recommendation A and B, your proposal. Yep, thank you very much. Councillor Cocking.
Councillor Cocking, Portland Ward. I would like to second Councillor Louis O'Leary, and that would be for A and B of the recommendations.
That's made that very clear. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? If there's no more deliberation and members are satisfied they've heard the entire presentation and debate, I will seek a vote. We've got a proposal and duly seconded for recommendation A and B, and I will now take a vote by a show of hands. All those in favour? For the benefit of those listening at home, that is a unanimous vote. Thank you very much. We're now going to readmit Councillor Clayton. I believe he's in the members' room. Committee and members of the public, whilst we're changing over, I think it might be an appropriate time for a comfort break. So 5 minutes? 5 minutes? Yeah. Is 5 minutes convenient to everyone? Yep, okay.
Cappuccino.
Okay, committee and members of the public, we're ready to resume. Okay, we'll now take item 5C on the agenda, the application number PRES, as reserved matter, 2021-04848, land at Foundry Lee, Burst Farm report. And this is for construction of 760 dwellings, open spaces, etc. I think this particular one is to do with Bull Pond. So I will now hand over to James Linton Travers, the case officer, to introduce this item. Over to you, James.
Good morning. The application has been approved at committee last August, actually, and it was approved subject to various conditions being discharged. Those conditions are now being discharged, hence there's a slight change to the recommendation on the update sheet, which basically today you would now just be granting the reserved matters. It was approved, but during the last few months, the Environment Agency have requested changes. I'll just explain what those changes are, but the result of those changes has led to 3 of the attenuation basins, these are for storing floodwaters, to change shape or location, and I will show you precisely what that is in a moment. So here's a brief description of what's happening. Basin 2 is reduced in size. Basin 6 is relocated to the north, and Basin 7B is reshaped. And looking at the overall scheme, this is a... It's not on the screen, is it? So looking at the overall scheme, this is obviously the housing layout which you approved last year. There's no changes to that whatsoever. And these round circles are zoomed in basins, the attenuation basins. So starting on the left-hand side here, on the western side, this is a zoomed in of that attenuation basin, next to the River Semain, obviously. And that one is being reduced in size. So the red was the original attenuation basin, and the dark blue is the smaller attenuation basin. Then zooming in here onto the development, which actually fronts onto West Road, the attenuation basin, the red, was originally just there. It's now moving here. It's quite small, actually. This piece of land was never had development on it. It was just left as open space. And then finally, this attenuation basin on the eastern side, zoomed in there, and this is the detail here. This one has grown slightly bigger. It's a slightly different shape. It's longer, but obviously we're not including that area there. And all of this came about at the request of the Environment Agency, after the applicants had provided updated hydraulic modelling, which took account of the final bridge crossing point, culverts and floodplain compensation designs. And it found that some of the attenuation basins actually fell within the floodplain. This is from the updated hydraulic modelling for the Environment Agency. And that's why these changes are necessary. Suffice to say, visually, there wouldn't be significant alteration. They're not particularly large features. They're just merely for drainage, storing suds features, water. And so there's a section through what these features are. Effectively, it's just a relatively shallow area of land. It doesn't contain water all year round. That's why it's called a basin rather than a pond. During a heavy rain event, for example, it might have water in it temporarily overnight or something. But they're not ponds. They are just shallow ditches in the ground, and they are landscaped accordingly. So the recommendation, as on the update sheet, is to approve or grant approval of the reserve matters subject to the conditions. We've included a copy of the original report, and on this report there is a revised list of conditions. The changes to those conditions are effectively some of the plan numbers have changed because of the attenuation basins, and that's why we brought it back to you. Purely for that reason, actually, not for any other reason. This is considered to be a relatively straightforward and minor change to the approved proposals. It was just merely to regularise the list of plan numbers.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, James. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? Councillor Clayton.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask, I tried to clarify this myself, but I got confused with the sheer volume of documents stored. Was the current design submitted before or after the Flood Risk Management Team's report of the 19th of April this year?
Yes, it was before the report of the Flood Risk Management Team.
Thank you. In which case, could I just point out that that report does say, in reference to basins 6 and 7B, that they are less than ideal design for an attenuation basin on a greenfield site. I just wanted to clarify that remark.
What that's referring to is that the basins meet Syria guidance, i.e. that they shouldn't need to be fenced. And we've since clarified that the basins do meet Syria guidelines. This is for health and safety, so that people don't fall into them. They're not deep enough, really, to need fencing, so they would just be natural features that wouldn't have any enclosure. That's what the flood risk manager was referring to, that on a new development you would certainly avoid having fenced areas for these things. That was the reference.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Clayton? We've now got Councillor Susan Cocking.
So actually, it's following on from Councillor Clayton's question, where he's saying about the fence. Oh, sorry, it's carrying on from Councillor Clayton's question about the basins and that. And you've said about the fencing. It says on page 264, Dorset Council's comment was, and there may be somewhere else it's in the depth of all these documents, that it would appear that Basin 7 would appear to exceed the recommended max depth and would appear to need fencing. Is that correct? Because I've just heard you say that it doesn't need fencing, and in the report here it says it needs fencing. I might be reading it wrong.
I'll hand that back to you, James.
Chairman, could the lady provide the paragraph number in the report?
On the top of page 264, it says, Council landscape comment, the depth of the annuation basin, 7B on 2.5, would appear to exceed the maximum depth.
Sorry, I didn't appreciate that. Was the consultation comment from the landscape? Right, no, that has since been clarified with the landscape officer. He made that comment. We've since been back to him, and he's agreed that that wouldn't be the case. So that was the initial comment that he made, but discussions ensued following that, Chairman, to look at this in particular detail, I can assure you.
I'm going back to you, Councillor Cocking. Are you happy with that response?
Yeah, I'm happy with the response, but just from a health and safety matter, it is completely safe, that basin now then, without fencing. Okay, just wanted it clarified, that was all.
Yeah. Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. Being a Portland councillor, along with my colleague, Councillor Cockins, we take flooding on Portland pretty serious. Can you tell me, have you done any desktop exercises with this, with all scenarios? We're all fed global warming every day, and have we now got it right? Thank you.
I'm going to hand that one back to you, James. So would you respond, please?
So I'm obviously not an expert in such things, but other people are, and the people who compile these hydraulic calculations and drainage basins and so on are experts and engineers in their field. And if you actually looked at the reports that we've had, it's pretty comprehensive and detailed. I think we have to have some faith in these people.
Are you happy with that response? Yes. Thank you. Okay. I understand that our Head of Planning would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just a quick comment that we understand that when we get assessments of flood risk data, it's taking account of future predictions of climate change anyway, and those are updated at various, which can cause difficulties because sometimes where we've had some assumptions about where flood risks are, they change over time. But that modelling continues on a regular basis so that we can have the latest available information about what climate change predictions are going to be doing to flood risk and surface water, that kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Councillor Weller.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I wasn't sure whether this was a technical question or a comment, but I'm going to make it now since we're talking about fencing around the attenuation ponds, and I understand attenuation ponds very well. I lost a member of my family to drowning in an attenuation pond, which, although a long time ago and long before we ever thought about flooding, was deemed to be safe. There were 3 inches of water in the pond at the time, and he drowned. I saw the impact that made upon my family, and I'm afraid, hate the idea that another family would go through that, and if fencing will prevent that for just one child, then there should be fencing, in my view, because you can't bring it back, you can't make right what you failed to do. And I know that that's a very objective comment, but nevertheless a valid one, in my view.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. Do you wish to respond at all, James?
So the one thing I didn't point out, although I think it's probably obvious, is these attenuation basins are not intended to be used for passive recreation or anything like that. Within the scheme, we are providing, they are providing significant areas of open space, new footpath as a circular route around the site, as you may recall, playing fields and so on and so forth. These features, which are within next to the River Semain, are effectively attenuation features, which will look natural. They won't actually look like some of the attenuation basins that you see on other developments, old developments, which can be quite deep and have quite steep sides. I have seen that sort of thing. Regardless of that, these are not intended for people to go and play in them or walk around in them. They are just merely passive features. But they are of such a nature, of such a design, that they are quite large, as you may have noticed. So they don't need to be particularly deep. Fencing is something, obviously, that CRIA guidelines may require, but at this point in time, we do not believe that they will require fencing. We wouldn't want to impose fencing just for the sake of it.
Thank you, James. I believe that you'd like to come back on that for a moment, Councillor Wells.
Thank you. I'm not suggesting that these attenuation ponds would be used for recreation or leisure or anything else. The simple fact is that small children, and this is quite a big development where we're hoping to have young families, small children wander, and small boys and girls play, almost certainly not in their designated areas, because that's not an awful lot of fun. It's much more fun to play in the non-designated areas. My 3-year-old brother was not out playing. He was wandering. He had wandered off. That's what children do. And I do accept that fencing can sometimes almost be an attraction. It can almost be a distraction to a nice layout, but fairly dense indigenous hedging would be exactly that. It would look natural. And I'd just like, I'm sorry because I am being paranoid about this, but I do worry about the safety. We get flash floods now. That water won't remain there for very long. I accept that. But for that short while, it's a potential danger.
Thank you, Councillor Weller.
Councillor Worth.
Councillor O'Leary, is this a technical question?
Councillor Worth.
Yes, over to you, Councillor O'Leary.
Oh, I broke the desk. Relating back to what Councillor Weller, I mean, I've got a development in my ward recently built. It's got two of these in, and to do it retrospectively is incredibly difficult. So I would support trying to get it done now while we're in this stage and trying to do it in retrospect. Because I know exactly how difficult it is.
That really isn't a technical question, but I take that on board.
The planning officer would like to speak.
Okay, I'm going to take Councillor Worth first and then come back to the planning officer.
Yeah. I take on board the comments, and I also agree with Councillor Weller. And the technical question is, why can't we condition a fence around this if we, as members, perceive the potential danger to anybody that could wander off when that has got water in it? You know, it's not a recreational area. We all agree. As a child, I played in areas that were not recreational areas, and I'm sure most of the people in this chamber did that as a young person, you know, and still do. So therefore, I think we'd have to look at the potential for a problem, and that is part of our job, to look at mitigating potential problems when we come to planning. And my question is, why can't we condition a fence around these shallow attenuation features?
Thank you, Councillor Worth. I'm going to come back to you, James, to answer questions from Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Worth. Over to you. Are you going to take that first?
Thank you, Chair. The basins, I understand, have been designed with gradients on the side, which is basically sort of 1 and 3, which comply with the CIRIA guidelines. The idea being that if somebody went into the pond, it's a relatively shallow gradient before they got to any depth in the water. In theory, members could condition fencing around it. I think there does come with consequences in terms of what type of fencing, because if we just put something like a post and rail fence around it, people can still climb the post and rail. So you end up with something quite oppressive looking to actually create a fence of sufficient height that nobody could climb over it if they were that way inclined to go into it or determined to get into it. And then we get into things like, do we require signage or a life buoy, etc. But they are meant to be designed in such a way that the gradients allow sort of easy access out if you were to go in. We have rivers, we have streams in our towns and villages. We don't fence around those. We can't always account for all incidences, but yeah, it's for members to consider the appropriateness of it, because it would have a knock-on visual impact.
Could I just, yeah, sorry, just to echo what Anne Collins was saying, there is, I suppose there's an underlying principle here is that by design, there is, to some extent, there's a preference to minimise the need for fencing, because ultimately you get a better outcome. And if you go down the route of fencing and that becomes a standard practice, then you end up effectively saying that it's okay for those areas to be deeper and have a much steeper gradient, which design-wise it may not be such a good outcome. Equally, if somebody does happen to get over the fence, you end up in a slightly more dangerous situation, because the attenuation ponds could be deeper with a sharper gradient because they've got the fencing. So I think there's been a tendency to work towards the principle of minimising the need for these where possible, so that you actually end up with a design that secures appropriate safety that experts consider it meets the standards, without having undue impact in terms of landscape visual urban design, but at the same time it also ensures safety. So I think that's the overlying principle. But as Anne has mentioned, it's a matter for members to consider that if they feel that they wish that condition.
Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Worth, you've heard that response. Are you satisfied with that? Yeah. Okay. I know I'm going to call on Councillor Dancy.
Thank you, Chairman. I entirely agree with my colleagues, Councillor Weller and Worth. We all know that young children are attracted to bodies of water, and you are introducing these bodies of water. And as Councillor Weller has said, you can drown in 2 or 3 inches. So it may not look pretty, but why do we not safeguard for the future? I do appreciate that it's been designed so that people basically won't get out of their depth and could easily get out, and it will be shallow. But even so, you are introducing bodies of water, and they have the ability to kill. Thank you.
Anne Collins, would you like to come in on that, please?
Thank you, Chair. Just to reinforce something James said earlier, these aren't designed to be full of water permanently. For instance, the ponds would only ever reach their maximum depth on a 1 in 100-year event, taking into account climate change. So, it's a 1 in 100-year rain event when a pond would be like to fill up. And they are designed then to allow for drainage out of the ponds. That they don't stay full then for an indefinite period of time. They're designed to let that water gradually flow out. Just to kind of reinforce that point, then they're not designed as ponds to be full of water permanently. So we find with a lot of these basins, actually, most of the time in the event of rain, all they've got, excuse my phrasing, but is they've got a soggy bottom, really, where there's a little bit of water's gone in. But yeah, just for members to be aware of that, really.
Thank you for that. Right, that actually would... Is that a technical question? Okay, Councillor Cocking.
Technical. Could we just have a look at the map again of how near these basins are actually to the houses? That would be, do we have some measurements on how near they are actually to the houses or flats or things like that?
Thank you. I'd ask you to respond with that, James.
Apologise. So that plan, that's we have already approved, I have to say, we have already approved these attenuation basins in the locations shown. I would point out they're not nearer housing than they were last August. No, I'm just pointing that out for you, though. It's difficult to see here, isn't it? But so this attenuation basin has got smaller. It's no nearer the housing there, proposed housing, than it was in August. This attenuation basin's moved nearer the road. I suppose it's a little bit nearer there. This isn't intended to be particularly big. And again here, this attenuation basin has changed shape, but it's in the same location in relation to that housing across a road than it was in August. So it's not as though we've moved things nearer where people will live.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you. While you've still got the map up, can you actually put numbers to each basin? Which one is 7B, which one is 2, and which one is 6?
So it's 2, no. Oh. So this is 2, this is 6, this is 7B.
We'll see how the debate goes. Yeah. Okay.
Shall I take this off now?
To answer, Councillor Williams?
Yeah, I'll wait till the debate.
Any more technical questions? Then, if there's I now open the debate to members. Who wishes to speak? Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Knowing this area very well, being a resident of Bridport, particularly during winter months, the area of Basin 7B regularly floods there's regularly floodwater there during the winter months and when we have high rainfall at any time of the year. And therefore I'd like a condition that particularly that basin is fenced.
Councillor O'Leary.
Yeah, Chairman, I was going to suggest something similar, so I'm happy to second Councillor Williams if that was a proposal.
Councillor Williams, are you proposing a proposition to introduce a condition for fencing?
Yes, I was. For how?
Yeah, okay.
How many? All three?
For all three?
No.
Particularly Basin 7B, I think the other two are probably less likely to, possibly 6 as well. All three? All three then.
Can I go to Councillor Dunseith to make a proposal?
Yeah. Well, yeah, well, I'd like to propose that we do condition fencing along these ponds. It's just a matter of which one. You've suggested 7B. I would also suggest 6. It's gone across the road and it's in very close proximity to a house. It's whether we wanted to do, was it number 2 as well? So that's for debate.
We've got a proposal on the table, but I would like to introduce a proposal of my own. I would like to propose that we defer the item for further consideration in view of the fact that, of course, we're putting in fencing against the officer's recommendation, which may affect the view of the sediment ponds. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Weller.
I'm happy to defer if that's the way that the chairman is minded. What I would like, though, is to send a strong instruction to our planning officers. I actually asked for fencing when this original plan came up for exactly the same reasons. I asked for fencing on the application that Councillor O'Leary referred to, and I didn't win then either. And I've asked for fencing around attenuation ponds over the last 20-odd years on planning applications that I've sat on, all with no success, but it doesn't stop me trying. But now we're talking about very much more strongly about the environment, and it may be, as I said earlier, that indigenous hedging, hawthorn bushes will stop any small child getting through it and looks natural. So perhaps by deferring, we can ask the planning officers to speak with the landscape designers and so on to maybe find some other way of making these attenuation ponds fit into the environment in a more fitting way. and a hedge around it will actually help to the absorption of excess water and help with our climate agenda as well. So we could strike all sorts of blows all in one go.
Leary's next.
Yeah.
Anne wants to speak as
Okay,
well.
before I take Councillor Leary and I'm going to hand over to our legal expert.
Thank you, Chair. My advice to the committee would be that we give serious consideration to the expert advice that the planning officers have received from the Environment Agency and the Flood Risk Management team, that these basins are safe. I can see that there's a strength of opinion here that they might not be, and I think if the feeling should be that some fencing may be required, that there doesn't seem to be a consensus at the moment as to what that fencing or security measures should be, that perhaps it might be helpful for a member of the flood risk team to come to the committee, that we defer this item, and that they can actually show us how these basins operate, because my understanding from dealings with past schemes is that they are very shallow and that they do not hold a great depth of water for any period of time. On technical issues, we do have a proposal that has been seconded, but I'm not entirely clear what that proposal is for other than fencing. So I think we need a little bit more detail on that, because we will have to take a vote on that issue first.
Thank you. Councillor Leary, I believe Anne Collins would like to have a word.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we could attach a condition along the lines of prior to construction of the drainage basins. I mean, members probably need to consider what drainage basins, because there are other drainage basins in the scheme other than the three we're talking about today. But prior to the construction of drainage basins, a scheme for fencing. Yeah. For fencing. Oh, that's because we've had to move the microphone. Sorry, Chair, we'd run out of microphones. Yeah, so we'd need to be clear about what drainage basins we're fencing or considering landscaping for. And as Hannah Massett said, I'd want to have some understanding from members in terms of what they might possibly be envisaging in fencing, although officers would be able to agree the details. But we could have a condition along the lines of prior to construction of the drainage basins, a scheme for fencing and or landscaping should be submitted to the local planning authority for approval. We'd want some maintenance conditions in respect of any any landscaping as well, and that the scheme shall be implemented prior to first use of the basins or similar wording, reasons being in the interest of health and safety. So it is a possibility for something to be conditioned rather than deferring, Chair.
I believe we did have a number of speakers. I think Councillor O'Leary, and then Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to withdraw my seconding of Councillor Williams's proposal and put my own, and it would be, I'd like to recommend approval, but put a condition that the three basins raised are fenced by either wooden fences or by indigenous natural hedges. Sorry? Yeah, I did say that's as a condition.
We have three propositions on the floor at the moment. Two of them duly seconded.
No, none of them.
Oh, yeah. Councillor Leary seconded. Sarah.
He's just withdrawn.
Oh, he's just withdrawn. That's right.
Okay. We've now got Councillor Clayton and Baldwin.
Okay, Councillor Clayton.
In the queue.
Thank you, Chair. I could come up with a lot of criticisms about this application, but in the long term, it has been dragging on for so long. I would just like to see it done and dusted. If we could reach an agreement today, I would really prefer it. I am more than happy to follow the officer's recommendation with that condition if my fellow councillors are, and I would propose that, along with all the other proposals, that we accept with the addition of the recommendation just outlined to us by the officer.
Councillor Bowell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm listening to the officer. This has already got approval apart from some minor jiggling around. It's slightly frustrating, but I do understand the sentiment from Councillor Weller, and I think I'm not sure how you're going to deal with all these proposals or in what order, Chair, but there's no way I would like to vote for a deferment today. I think that we've got enough knowledge and methods to actually go forward with this application. I do like the idea of conditioning in it. I think that leaves it open for a satisfactory scheme to be implemented at the time. But deferment's not on the table for me. Thank you.
Councillor Kimber and then Councillor Cocking.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, having heard the debate through, I'm happy to go along with the planning officer's suggestion and what seems to be, if you like, the debate. We've actually got to get on with it, but we are mindful about the safety, and safety is paramount in our planning as we pass these various planning applications. So safety has always got to be there. So if we can say what we will have, possibly come back to us and say, look, I've put this lovely row of hawthorn bushes in around it, and that'll stop anybody and everybody getting near it. But yeah, so that's my thinking. Thank you.
I'm going to come back to Anne Collins to guide us.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to respond to a comment by Councillor Leary. I take it when you first said wooden fencing, it's not like close boarded fencing. We want to be seeing close boarded fencing around a pond of that kind of size. It would look really unattractive. So I don't know if it's a reference to post and rail fence. Obviously, just being mindful that obviously post and rail fence can be climbed. But it's just some clarification around that point, because I wouldn't want that to be the expectations of members about sort of timber close boarded fencing, because that would be very inappropriate in terms of urban design and amenity.
Thank you for that. Councillor Cocking, wishing to speak? Yeah, yes. Councillor Cocking.
I was just going to second Councillor O'Leary's proposal, and along the lines of Anne Collins as well. I take on comment about what type of fencing it would be, but that would be a technical issue, and I would rather, and I do not want the recommendation to be deferred either. So if we can work out the technical wording, I'm sure our very experienced planning officers can think of something along the same lines as Councillor O'Leary.
It's the committee's decision or wording which actually counts. We are the committee, so we've got to come up with the formal words ourselves. It's been suggested, Councillor Williams, that to ask you if you are prepared to withdraw your proposal in favour of the recommendation for the planning officer to continue with the condition for fencing.
Yeah, I'll withdraw my proposal for condition, but as long as that condition is, are we taking Louis' proposal? Yeah, that's fine.
Now I'm coming to you, Councillor O'Leary, regarding your proposition. Are you prepared to amend your proposition to allow the planning officer to the design of the fencings that you stipulated rather than the hedging or the natural wood?
Yes, Chairman, I'm happy for that.
Councillor Clayton, are you happy that in fact you amend your, what's the seconding your proposal?
Sorry, so that you would be supporting Councillor O'Leary's amended
Would you?
proposal?
Oh, yes, of course, because you seconded. Would you supporting Councillor O'Leary's amended proposal? Okay, we're down to Councillor O'Leary. We need a seconder for your proposal in its amended form, and then we're going to go for formal words in order. We're going to to form a wording for the condition you proposed. Councillor Weller.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and sorry to have set this hair running. I never envisaged close boarding fencing. I know that it's post and rail that is put around here, and I'm partially happy with that, and I'm partially happy with the way that the amendment is going. However, I would like, for now and for the future, for our planning officers to explore with landscape officers the idea that instead of fencing, we do explore hedging. We've lost an awful lot of hedgerows across the country. They actually improve the environment. These new houses will disturb a whole lot of wildlife and birds. Planting hedges will encourage those back. It will encourage the absorption of excess water, that flash flooding and everything else. So I think that as a mitigation feature, it's a very useful one, and I would like it to be there on the table that where possible, even if it's only hedging partly along those fences so that it can gradually grow round by natural surrounding, you know. I just don't like the idea that we're just going to say we'll put post and rail fence in because that's what the councillors want, full stop. Let's do some hedging as well, at the very least, or explore it, please.
Can I confirm that you were actually seconding Councillor O'Leary's proposal for?
Happy to second Councillor O'Leary's proposal, but with those provisos that we do ask our planners to have a discussion with our landscape experts about using natural screening rather than just post and rail.
I'm happy to accept that.
O'Leary, are you happy with that?
Yes.
Yes. Councillor Cutting.
I was just going to second Louis' amendment about the fence, about the hedgerow, whatever. So I don't. If you need me to second something, I'll second it.
Right, we've got a proposal, Julie. I think Julie seconded. Yes. I think duly seconded to actually amend the proposal to include a condition. Before we adjourn to find the wording, I'm going to hand over to Anne Collins.
Thank you, Chair. I actually have some wording for you now, if you'd like me to share my screen.
Slight delay.
That work?
Yeah, it's coming up. There you go. Yeah.
Here we go. Sorry, Chair, the writing's a bit small, so I'll read it out to you. Prior to the construction of drainage basins 2, 6 and 7B, which are the ones we've been talking about today, schemes for the fencing and or landscaping around the drainage basins and a scheme for the maintenance of the landscaping and fencing shall be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. Thereafter, the approved scheme for each basin shall be carried out in full prior to first use of each drainage basin and shall be retained thereafter. The reason being in the interest of health and safety.
Yes, happy with that.
Okay, we've now got a proposal duly seconded to amend the proposal from the planning officer to include a condition in the form of the words that are outlined by Anne Collins.
Sorry, Chair. Also, there was just an update on the update sheet about the wording of conditions 2, 3 and 4, so it would just be good to get clarity that proposer and seconder is also including that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Shall we go and take a vote? Yes. Do apologise, members of the public. I got a bit tied up with this one. Okay, all those, and we've got a proposal duly seconded on the table. You've read the form of words. Everyone happy with the form of words? We now take a vote with a show of hands. All those in favour? Unanimous. Members of the public watching at home, that's a unanimous decision for the case officer's recommendation with a condition added as outlined in the wording that you've just seen. Thank you. I would like to welcome Councillor Penfold. Hello.
Very sorry I was late. I was at another meeting. Could I declare an interest in item 5D and 5E? I have sought advice on this and I know the applicant, so I will not speak or vote on these two items. Thank you.
So 5D is the next one, and as you're aware, the no protocol demands that, in fact, you leave the room whilst the debate is taking place and then return after the vote is completed.
Didn't hear you. Well, I won't speak anyway.
It's on?
No, it's Mary.
Oh, okay, we go. Yes, what I was saying. That was the confusion. We couldn't hear you, but yes, the new protocol says that, in fact, you should leave the room whilst that is being debated and return after the vote is completed. Okay? Thank you. Sorry for the delay on that. We've taken a vote on that, and that has concluded that particular item at last. And we're now going to take item 5D on the agenda. We're going to complete 5D, and then following that, we're going to break for lunch. Okay, 5D is application number PFUC. It's a variation of conditions 2023-00785 Whitcomb Manor Stables, A352 Kame Park Road to Main Road, Broadmain, Whitcomb, DT2 8NY. And that's for the erection of 4 in number houses to existing yard and 3 in number houses to yard 2 without compliance with the condition 4 of planning permission E 96000515 to remove restrictions as to use. I now invite James Litton-Travers, the case officer, to introduce this item. Over to you, James.
This application is effectively what we call a variation of condition application. So where it says that the proposal is to erect 4 houses and 3 houses without compliance with condition 4, it's effectively to vary the condition to something else. So this is an old application. It's located within a racehorse stables complex consisting of stables, dwellings, and so on and so forth, all purpose built. It's all there, it's all been built. This particular application relates to these 4 dwellings, 2 pairs of semi-detached houses, which are there, they've been built. They're next to some stables. This application was actually also for 3 more houses in yard 2. They were never built because they decided to build the houses somewhere else. And in due process, that part of the scheme was revoked by a legal agreement to stop it from being built. So we only have the 4 dwellings as part of that permission. And these are the 4 dwellings, what they look like. So what we're seeking today is to vary a condition. The condition was that they only be occupied by people training racehorses. It was quite precise that it was training racehorses, which does seem to rather exclude, say, a riding school or any other equestrian use, which is quite unusual. And we are now looking that the condition be varied such that people occupying the 4 dwellings could train racehorses, but also could be using their dwellings as holiday accommodation. So we'd have like a double condition. And where this sits within policies of our local plan, Econ 6 and SUS 3. And just to give you some background on this, clearly it's a large complex. There are lots of dwellings here. We're only looking at, with this application, the next application on the agenda, Chairman, is indeed for some of the other dwellings there, a similar proposal, but obviously it's a separate application because they're separate permissions. But on this one, and indeed on the next one, the applicant has basically stated that the racehorse complex is really no longer viable to be exclusively used for training racehorses. The report is given by the applicant, and I've no reason really to dispute that report. It's basically too far away from where most of the race courses are. These sort of establishments need to be closer to race courses for them to be viable. So effectively, most of the accommodation is just not it's sitting empty. There's 1 horse there, only 1 horse, because there's no need now for training racehorses. So the lack of viability is not disputed. The Parish Council refer in their objection to policy Econ 10. That's not actually relevant to this application. They got the wrong policy. That's easily done because most of us would slip up on that, because Econ 10 is just really looking at holdings rather than dwellings. What we do need is policy Econ 6, and Econ 6 supports the reuse of an existing building in the countryside as built tourist accommodation, and that's what they're seeking in addition to the training of racehorses. So the proposals for the 4 dwellings would comply with policy Econ 6. The other policy, SUS 3, concerns development in the open countryside, and policy SUS 3 permits the conversion of rural buildings to dwellings, and is in step, not quite in step with the National Planning Policy Framework, which doesn't require dwellings to be tied to an existing dwelling within the holding. They can just be in remote locations such as this. Effectively, the recommendation, therefore, is that it does comply with policy. We could impose a condition which retains the use for training racehorses, but also would either or allow holiday accommodation. Now, because there was, the original permission was for another 3 dwellings on Yard 2, and there was a 106 agreement or legal agreement to revoke the 3 dwellings on Yard 2, if we were to grant permission for this, we would have to vary that deed or that 106 agreement as well. It's just purely a legal exercise to ensure that they don't build Yard 2. Because in granting a variation of condition, we effectively grant a new plan permission that sits alongside the old one. And we would therefore need a variation of the 106 agreement. It's there on the screen. The wording, I don't think I need to read it, but it includes people can live in these dwellings who are concerned with the racehorse training establishment, and that was the original wording of the condition, but also for holiday accommodation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, James. We have a number of public speakers on this particular item. And I'm going to start off by inviting Jeremy Pope, Dorset Area of Natural Beauty Partnership, to address the committee. Please speak directly into the microphone. You have 3 minutes. Over to you, Jeremy.
I wonder, sorry, Chairman, whether I could suggest that the chair of the parish council spoke first, because what I've got to say is works very closely in conjunction with his view, if that is possible.
Okay, I usually take them in order, but you... Okay, next speaker then before you, Jeremy, is Councillor Graham Brandt, Winterbourne Farringdon Parish Council. I wish you to address the committee. Again, please speak directly into the microphone. You have 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I am not the chairman of Winterbourne Farringdon Parish Council. I am Graham Brandt. I am of Bingham Parish Council, which is part of Winterbourne Farringdon Group. Thank you. Winterbourne Farringdon Grouped Parish Council wishes to commend Dorset Council Planning Department for placing these applications before the full committee and for realising that the implications of them are far too wide-ranging for there to be delegated decisions. This is not a simple variation of a planning condition, but a fundamental change of use to the original planning consent. This is also not the first time that such a change has been requested and previously refused. Nothing about the site being strictly for equine use has changed since 1987. That was the sole reason given in the original application. The site is still within the area of outstanding natural beauty and remains very rural. There remain many horses in the stables, and so the question of viability is a red herring. There is also at least one non-equine commercial business operating on the site. Winterbourne Farringdon Parish Council has written to Dorset Council numerous times about the current abuse of this site and the online evidence of holiday lettings and of user feedback. The Parish Council is also aware of increased bin collections, registrations on the electoral roll, and mail and parcel deliveries. The electoral registrations probably indicate long-term lettings. The Senior Planning Enforcement Officer issued a planning enforcement notice in September 2022, but chose to not follow up on it because these applications were in the pipeline. The planning enforcement notice was confirmation that the owner was and is contravening the planning conditions. West Dorset District Council mandated specific conditions and protections on this site when granting planning consent 36 years ago, and these conditions were inherited by Dorset Council in 2019. Should one or more of any of those conditions be revoked or changed, then the original concept of strictly for equine use only would be irrevocably altered. Any change of use to holiday lets or any other commercial venture would also bring into question the raison d'etre of the Dorset AONB. The AONB is what West Dorset District Council most wanted to protect. Winterbourne Farringdon Group Parish Council opposes these applications and strongly urges that they be refused. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Brandt. Right. Jeremy Pope, would you now like to speak? Over to you.
Chairman, I'm a member of the AONB Partnership Board representing heritage through my involvement with Dorset Museum. Coincidentally, I have been associated with other bodies such as the Jurassic Coast Trust relating to Dorset's heritage, be that relating to its geology, landscape, biodiversity, history or culture. I'm also a qualified solicitor. The statement made by the Parish Council sets out most clearly why it believes that these applications should be refused, a position which the AONB Partnership and other bodies represented here today share. Restrictions imposed at the time that planning permission was granted originally were very carefully drafted so that all of the facilities needed for the operation of a racing stables had to be observed together and without exception in order to maintain its viability. Thus it is, with respect, impossible to apply to amend any of them on an ad hoc or selective basis without vitiating all the protections so carefully imposed. It seems clear that the owner, in outbidding Liz Nelson's partner's offer following her death, and who wished to continue to operate the enterprise as racing stables, did so in the expectation that he would be able to amend the restrictions and thus enable him to develop the site for his own commercial purposes. This has been exemplified by the plethora of applications that have been made and either refused or withdrawn over the years. The protection of the site within the AONB is of paramount importance, together with the protection of Whitcomb's heritage assets, other local cultural assets, and also the water supply serving Weymouth at Empool. The summary of the reasons for granting the original planning permission, that is application 1/D/09/001-333, are very clear and should be upheld, I submit by refusing this application. If need be, I will happily read out the sections that I was referring to there.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. Okay, right. The third person I've got on the my list is Alban O'Brien, Whitcomb Parish Council. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Alban O'Brien. I'm here representing the Thomas Hardy Society. This proposal is of importance to the Society because of the close proximity of this development to the church at Whitcomb. This is historically significant in its own right, being next to the site of a lost medieval village and a place of worship from pre-Roman times with rare medieval wall paintings. But it's also a place that Hardy knew well and would have visited frequently. William Barnes, the poet, philologist and polymath, was the curate at Whitcomb between 1847 and 1852 when Hardy was a boy living at Bockhampton. Barnes returned to Whitcomb in 1862 when he was appointed rector at Winterbourne Came, and the church at Whitcomb again came under his jurisdiction. This was, in fact, the church where William Barnes preached his very first and his very last sermon. William Barnes was very much a significant other in Hardy's life. It was Barnes rather than Hardy who first revived the name of Wessex for the county of Dorset that he knew so well. They first struck up a friendship when Hardy was an apprenticed architect in South Street in the firm of John Hicks between 1856 and 1862, and William Barnes had a school next door where he lived with his daughter. Hardy and Barnes were to remain lifelong friends. Hardy moved back to Dorchester in 1883 and moved into his house at Maxgate in 1885. This was only a short distance from where Barnes now lived at Came Rectory, and he was a frequent visitor, sometimes with important guests, such as the author Edmund Goss. As an ecclesiastical architect, the church at Whitcomb would have been on Hardy's itinerary. His famous poem, The Last Signal, commemorates Barnes's death in 1886. The Hardy Society is naturally concerned at any development which might impact adversely on the unique character of this part of Dorset, West Dorset, and which would be deleterious to the heritage we wish to preserve and the tourism that is dependent on it. We are keen to maintain the unique quality of the Dorset landscape, which was recognised when the area was designated as an area of outstanding natural beauty. This is important in protecting not only our county's heritage, but also in meeting the needs of our many literary tourists. These come from all over the world, and they are keen to relate their reading of the works of Hardy and Barnes to a specific landscape. In particular, the church at Whitcomb and the Great Barn next to it are iconic historic landmarks on the Dorchester to Wareham Road, which may not be immediately under threat, but for which access and parking might be more difficult if there's a change of use. We therefore ask that the Council proceed with extreme caution in sanctioning this proposed development, giving its proximity to a place of historical and literary significance. AONB status means that this landscape is of national rather than just local significance. And for many people, that significance is directly related to the landscape's connections with Barnes and Hardy. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. I've now got Brett Spiller, Chapman Lilly Planning, an agent for the applicant, to address the committee. Over to you, Brett.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. On behalf of the applicant, I would just like to point out these are existing dwellings. So they are tied, but they are existing dwelling houses, and they have remained empty for some time, which in itself would seem to be something of a travesty. In terms of the impacts, given that they are existing dwellings upon the AONB, I would suggest there aren't any direct landscape impacts as a result of the changes being sought here. And as you've just heard, tourism is obviously an important part of the local economy. Tourists come here to enjoy the landscape, the literary and historical heritage that you've just heard about. And this proposal is designed simply to give a little bit more flexibility rather than those particular dwellings sitting empty. It's very unfortunate that the stables and stud are not occupied to a greater degree, and the applicant's view on that is that they certainly employ strenuous efforts to try and encourage people to come down and establish businesses there. As you've heard from your officer, evidence has been provided which just demonstrates from first-hand testimony from various different operators that they simply believe it's in the wrong place. As a result, employment isn't as high as we'd like on the site, and that has rendered a number of these dwellings sitting empty. As I say, that to my mind is perhaps the biggest travesty of all. So we're after a little bit more flexibility. We're not looking to suggest that they be used for a wider range of uses. It is simply to allow more flexibility, allow a degree of income generation from it as well. I think anyone that's visited the site and knows it, it's incredibly well kept. Again, the purpose of that is trying to encourage new business occupiers, and that comes at a cost. So at the moment, we've got houses which are sitting empty. They do need to be maintained. The grounds need to be maintained, and a little bit more flexibility to allow an income stream will be important in terms of keeping those dwellings up together. You've heard it's already policy compliant, so we've worked hard with your officers to arrive at a scheme which ticks all the boxes in terms of policies. And they are there as obviously the starting point for your consideration today. So for the aforementioned reasons, I commend the officer's recommendation to you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, I now invite Councillor Roland Tarr, who's the ward member for Winterbourne and Broadmain, to address the committee. Councillor Tarr, you have 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. As you know, my family have been here for 200 years in the Dorset countryside. They were shepherds around Dorchester, and my immediate relations, many of them have been farmers who are involved in rural occupations, and I regard it as my job to protect the rural nature of this ward, which extends, roughly speaking, from Hardy Monument to Tinkleton and from the boundary with Dorchester to the northern boundary of Weymouth. I served on Dorset County Council's Heritage Coast Officer for many years in the 70s and 80s. I then became a consultant to West Dorset District Council on green tourism, and I then went to be a teacher. That should be relevant. I would just like to say that this is a total change of use of this facility. I would also like to say that we had an application in recently which was withdrawn earlier this year or late last year. And the officer who reported on that said, in order to determine whether the current business is no longer appropriate for the site, you would need detail on the viability of the equestrian business. I would typically expect the following information to be offered to support an application, and he was going to require a report to be written to establish that it was definitely not viable. I have read consulted the Savills information on remote stable yards, on racing courses. They say that beyond well-known horse race training areas, Bolton, Newmarket and Lambourne, an increasing number of racehorse trainers are operating very successfully from standalone yards throughout the UK. Having our own gallops is important that you can use at any time. Disease is an enormous problem with horses. If you're in Dorset, deepest Dorset, disease is not a problem. You're well away from the main stables and their diseases, which spread quite often, all of a sudden. Trainers of high-profile owners, with high-profile owners, like to have somewhere they can go, as it were, secretly or privately, so that the rest of the racing community are not sure quite what they're up to and what their horses are. They like to do these things in peace and quiet, and that's why the last owner, who operated this as a going concern very successfully, had a really nice house where people could stay and be introduced to the whole caboodle there. The premier yards around places like Newmarket, and I should draw attention to the fact there are 19 race stables in Dorset and the surrounding counties, all within range, and only 25 in Newmarket. So it's not the big centre. We're close to the French coast. We've got a ferry service, daily ferry service, which invites horse owners to take their horses to Normandy, and the 5 best race courses in France are listed in Normandy. So there's a whole range of opportunities there which are not being taken. The original application, this isn't the first time this has been challenged. It's one of a series of attempts to stop this being a stables. And the refusal by West Dorset District Council was the proposal represents a loss of equestrian use and the absence of evidence to demonstrate that continuing such use is inappropriate and or unviable. This application is contrary to the revised West Dorset District Local Plan, and it then quotes the items in that plan. So I would ask members to query, to challenge the assertion made that this site is not viable as a racing stables and should not remain in a rural use rather than being a home for people who rent it for a week at a time, send an order to the supermarket for their supplies, to drink their wine, eat their food at home in a rented accommodation, and only come for a few months of the year. The stable staff would be there all year round. They'd be spending money locally. That's why it was approved initially. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Tower. I'm now going to call on James Lytton-Travers to respond with any salient points he may wish to clarify, relating to, of course, all those speakers. So over to you, James.
Actually, nothing in particular springs to mind, merely that some representations implied that we would be losing equine accommodation. I think the point I should make is that I'm not suggesting the condition goes away. The recommendation is that it can remain as equine accommodation as well as holiday use. So they're interchangeable. Holiday uses would be temporary, they wouldn't be permanent. That's the difference. So the holiday use would be very intermittent, whereas the current condition, which I'm suggesting is retained for equine accommodation, or in fact training racehorses, doesn't go away. The dwellings don't go away, they're still available.
Thank you, James. Thank you very much. Are there any, committee, are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? Councillor Ireland.
Thank you. Sorry, I have potentially 4, if that's okay. I'll just read them out, and if you get lost, come back to me. The first were actually driven from the update sheet with the Dorset AONB comments. So the first one was concerned about the operation of an equine business without accommodation. So I'm just like clarification of how much actually equine business is going on at the moment. The statement seems to imply not a lot, if at all. Councillor Tarr is saying you could have an equine business, but that's not the same thing as there is one. The second question, I guess, is it's whether this is relevant or not. Dorset AONB have stated that if we approve this, this will be taken as a precedent going forward. I believe, as a planning committee member with some training, hopefully that's not relevant. So if you could confirm that that isn't. I think I guess they're worried about stables being converted to holiday accommodation, but this has no bearing, as far as I'm concerned, on this, but I'd like that clarified. We heard during the public session that apparently Dorset Council was going to take enforcement action, but this has been held in abeyance pending on the outcome of this. Yet we've just heard from the spokesman for the applicant that the buildings are empty. So why are we taking enforcement action on buildings which apparently aren't being used? There's there's a disconnect there. So we have people saying they are being used for holiday accommodation. We have been told that you can see the evidence on the internet because people are reviewing the properties. So it seems that they are being used, and we were taking enforcement action. But could you clarify if they are actually occupied at the moment? And I guess the final one is just a statement. So, we're all sitting on this planning committee, and I hope I speak for the rest of my colleagues that we take our roles and responsibilities very seriously. And I'm sure our predecessors and all the other committees which have considered all the other items on this site have done the same. And I'm sure they imposed the conditions that we were being asked to turn away for good reasons. But given the fact that apparently these conditions have been breached and we haven't taken enforcement action, I guess my question is more to Mr. Garrity rather than the planning officer, is if we do refuse this, and I have no idea how I'm going to vote, to be honest, at the moment, what assurance can we get from Mr. Garrity that if there are breaches, we will actually take enforcement action and the wishes of the members will actually be followed through and not get deferred to, let's face it, somebody who's sitting on a desk who doesn't actually report to us but reports to the chief exec? Sorry, that's 4 very long questions, but...
Come back to you, James, to respond with that. And then following that, we will take a vote for the continuance of the meeting beyond 3 hours.
Then Councillor
In terms of the current use, I'm aware that there isn't currently a racehorse training business going on in any of the buildings at all, actually. So they are, as far as I'm aware, vacant. The AOMB comment was partly, the AOMB officer in their late comment didn't raise issue with any harm on landscape because there isn't any impact on the landscape because the buildings are there and they would still be dwellings used as dwellings. So there isn't any change to the landscape. The question of enforcement, obviously, if there are enforcement proceedings, those are obviously in confidence and they're not necessarily in the public domain. So I'm not sure I can actually elaborate on that. Having said that, even if there were an enforcement investigation, that has nothing to do with determining a planning application. We cannot put a sort of a black mark against somebody because they might have or may not have been in breach of planning control. That shouldn't colour your judgment. You are just looking at this as a planning application for its merits and how it complies with policy and so on and so forth. You shouldn't let other proceedings colour your judgment. And the final question was for Mr. Garrett, but he may want to come back on it. But I think in terms of enforcement, it was related to this, wasn't it? I don't think there's much more really I could say.
Yes, just to, Councillor Ireland asked about the assurances around enforcement. With any enforcement situation, if there's a breach, there is an assessment about whether or not it's expedient to carry out enforcement action, depending on whether there's any harm as a result of it. So if a council is pursuing enforcement action, that doesn't automatically follow that we are necessarily going to conclude with taking direct action as such. It could well be that the situation is remedied through a planning application if it's felt that it can be dealt with in that way. So there are histories to sites where we have a number of actions that we potentially could follow. It could involve a planning application to remedy or rectify the situation. It could involve taking further action. If something doesn't have the benefit of planning permission, then in all cases we have to then carry out an assessment as to whether or not it's expedient, whether harm is being caused, and base it on those particular issues. So that would be something that we would deal with separately from this particular planning application that's before members. Thank you.
Councillor Ireland, are you happy with that response?
It was more on, I guess, on the very last point. I think we'd like to think when we make a decision and we impose a condition that it will be, upheld. And I know what the process was, which is why I asked the question. And, in the end, essentially what Mr. Garrity has just said is that it's down to the officers to decide whether the condition is actually followed through with. But it is what it is, I guess.
Thank you. I do have another speaker, Councillor Worth, but before I do so, members, committee meetings are limited to 3 hours duration. unless the majority of members present ballot for the meeting to continue. It is therefore necessary to take a vote to resume the meeting beyond that limitation. So I will now take a vote by show of hands. All those in favour of continuing the meeting beyond the 3 hours? That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, Councillor Worth.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is proposed to vary it so that they would be available for holiday lets. Would these holiday lets be in separate ownership to the current ownership of the equestrian centre, etc.? And you said about conditions that they would have to supply alternative addresses as their permanent address. I challenge that is something can easily be got round. Would it not be better to also include a restriction on not continuous use, i.e. like some caravan sites have 40-month or 48-month dwelling requirements? And just as a side issue, these properties are currently available on the internet for holiday let. I just Googled it.
Over to you, James.
So, no, they wouldn't be sold. In fact, actually, within that last 106 agreement with the parent application, it's a good way of describing it, there was actually a proviso that they remain as one holding within the holding, so they couldn't be sold. They would be still privately owned and let. The condition that we used there, the wording that I gave, is actually what the council always uses. I've used in my career other conditions, but we've sort of arrived at that one. I don't know whether Mrs. Massey has any comments at all on that, or Mrs. Collins, but that is our standard condition. I appreciate that people could fraudulently say they live somewhere else, but I think it's usually quite effective at ensuring that they are used as holiday use. I can't remember what your last question was, Chairman. What was the final point? Just remind me. Oh, sorry, they're on the internet. I'm sure there are lots of things on the internet. Again, if they're being advertised on the internet, as I said before, they're applying, we're considering this planning application, that should not colour your judgment that there may be a breach of control, that they're being advertised on the internet. That isn't relevant to your debate today.
Councillor Worth, are you happy with that response?
I'd like to come back on one point. I know that is a standard condition, but as we found out during COVID, and we had to shut down our caravan sites and that, there were a lot of people, and also in the marina, living permanently in those, although that is part of our standard agreement. So we do know that it is things that happen, and people do live in them in a permanent location. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any more questions of a technical nature for the case officer?
Yeah, sorry, is this on the last point again? I guess I'm getting confused now. So we're going to be imposing, if we go with the recommendation that they're only used for holiday lets, and I think they probably will be used for holiday lets rather than equestrian, because bottom line is you can get a lot more money from a holiday let than, I guess, renting out to somebody with horses. It was my understanding that we don't actually enforce this in any way. I know if you flip your property from council tax to business rates from April this year, the Valuation Office will take an interest in whether you're actually agreeing to abiding by the rules for making a property available for let. But we don't, as a council, do any enforcement, as far as I'm aware. No investigation can you tell me what actually investigation you do? So if we pass this, how would you determine that the person living there or not living there is or not living there, if that makes sense?
Can you answer that, please?
So in general, not talking specifically about Whitcomb Manor stables, the council do some monitoring, but we generally rely on people reporting potential breaches of control. And each case obviously is confidential, and we don't declare who reported it either. But as Mr. Garrity said, the council then has to consider whether it's expedient to take any further action. In consideration of that expediency, the council may actually negotiate the applicant making a planning application to regularise the breach. There are lots of mechanisms available to the planning authority. However, the council does not and could not monitor every single planning permission that is granted across the whole of the Dorset Council area. It just would be an impossible task. So we rely on people reporting things.
Are you happy with that response, Councillor Ireland? I don't think we've got any other technical questions, and so I now open the debate to members. Who is wishing to speak first?
Sorry, Chairman, yes. I think I might be coming from a different angle on this from some of my colleagues. I think it was the agent, forgive me, I didn't catch your name, said it was a travesty that these houses, cottages, were empty. And indeed, if that is the case, it is a travesty, not because they could be occupied by tourists, holiday makers, but they could be occupied by the people who are desperate for homes. And that's what worries me, that if they really can't be viable as workers' cottages, they could be viable for working people's cottages who work elsewhere. So I know that that's not, that's not what we're discussing at the moment, but it really worries me that houses are lying empty. They're not being used by people who are working within the industry there, and I'm concerned that they might be, and I think that that comes on to other issues as well. But the travesty is that they're lying empty when there are people who desperately need homes, in my view, and I know that that's not a consideration, but it is something that we should all be thinking about all the time.
Do we have any other speakers? We don't. If there's no more deliberation and members are satisfied that they've heard the entire presentation debate, I will seek a proposal and a seconder to take a vote by show of hands. Councillor Cocking.
Sorry, I don't know if you was pointing at me. Councillor, I propose that we accept the recommendation from the officer.
A proposal and a second to accept the officer's recommendation. All those in favour? Those against? 5. Oh dear. I've got a casting vote on this, and I vote in favour of the chairman's recommendation. That concludes this particular item. for the benefit of those at home, the recommendation was carried, so it's in favour of the officer's recommendation. I will now close the morning session for lunch, and the afternoon session will commence at 2 o'clock. Thank you for your indulgence, everyone. Thank you, committee. Thank you. Good afternoon, committee, and welcome to any new members of the public joining the afternoon session of the Western and Southern Area Planning Committee meeting. I now conduct a roll call of committee members. Councillor Dave Bower. Thank you. Councillor Kelvin Clayton. So, Councillor Susan Cocking. Councillor Jean Dunseth.
Present.
Councillor Nick Ireland. Councillor Paul Kimber. Councillor Louis O'Leary. No, he's gone. Councillor Mary Penfold. Oh, thank you, Mary. Councillor Kate Weller. Thank you. Councillor Sarah Williams. And Councillor John Worth. We will be continuing the agenda as set out in your packs. Councillor Penfold, I understand that you've already declared an interest in the last item, so therefore will be leaving us.
She's going again, is she?
Going again, yeah. Yes, she's only in for a few minutes.
Does that mean?
It's not me, is it?
I don't know. No, I don't think it was you. Who's that?
What are you watching?
Is that?
Okay, have we sorted that technical issue? Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. We're now going to take item 5E on the agenda, and that's the application number P VOC 2023-00785, Whitcomb Manor Stables, A352 Cane Park Road in Main Road, Broadmain, Whitcomb, DT2 8NY. Erect 50 stables together with ancillary accommodation and associated car parking and access. Erect owner's house with associated car parking and access with removal condition 11 of planning permission 1D09001333, restriction of use. I now invite James Linton Travers, the case officer, to introduce this item. Over to you, James.
Good afternoon. This is a variation of a planning condition on historic permission. So the permission has been granted in 2009. It's been implemented, partially implemented, and it had a restriction on its use. And for the accommodation, which is a flat and a house, to be occupied only by people training racehorses. So before lunch, we were looking at this side of the road, the four houses there, stable complex. There's some dwellings in here as well, actually. There's dwellings dotted around. These are houses, but they're not part of this application. This application relates to the south side of the road. Well, not actually quite the south-west side of the road, southeast side rather. And it relates to the house that was granted the permission and one flat in the attic of the stable block. So as you see, and I didn't show you this last time, the complex is quite large with lots of stables and houses and so on and so forth. And so this is the flat that we granted permission for. It's a groom's flat, isn't it? It's something like that, to be located above the 50 stables. And these are the plans of the house, a detached house. Those are the elevations of the stables, and that's what the house looks like. So they're seeking to vary that condition that the people living in the dwellings, 2 dwellings this time, only work with racehorses and allow them to be used as holiday accommodation as well. And here again, policy Econ 6 and SUS 3 of the adopted local plan are what we look at. I just thought this time I would show you some pictures of what it looks like. That's the stables. As you can see, they are, as the agent indicated, very well maintained and very nicely done, I have to say. And that's the house. It's built in stone. So on the issues here, of course, the applicant has demonstrated that it's no longer viable for training racehorses here because it's too distant from racetracks. They did look at, actually I never mentioned this before, but they did look at using it for livery stables, but even that isn't necessarily viable either. So we are stuck with racehorses. Policy Econ 6 does support the reuse of an existing building as tourist accommodation, and SUS 3 permits the conversion of rural buildings. In this case, use for accommodation for somebody training racehorses or holiday accommodation would comply with our policy. The recommendation, therefore, is to vary the 106 agreement that was attached to another permission, which revoked part of the works. I forgot to mention there was also a road to be built under this permission to Yard 2. That was revoked because they weren't building the houses on Yard 2 under the other permission, so we revoked the road. So if we were to grant permission for a new condition which would include equine or racehorse and holiday, we would need a deed to vary that 106 agreement to make sure they don't build a road to Yard 2, because Yard 2 doesn't exist. And so that is the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, James. Most of my listed speakers is not present. I do see that, in fact, Brett Spiller is still present. Do you wish to say a few words?
Please, Chairman. Thank you. I won't repeat the comments that I made on the previous item. They're exactly the same, so no need to replicate those. The point that I would just like to address was one made by Councillor Weller, which is probably beyond the scope of the Planning Committee, but one of the things that the applicant contemplated at the beginning of this process was to look at making the condition wider to allow both for holiday accommodation and for rental, acknowledging that there is a desperate need for housing, and I think we're absolutely aligned in that. Very regrettably, the planning policies within the current local plan would not actually support that approach, which is why we came to a position of seeking to vary that condition solely for holiday accommodation and the equine associated occupation as well. So perhaps just something for those of you that do have a role in terms of the new local plan, something to contemplate and consider, because it is something that the applicant would have been very amenable to in this instance, should planning policies have supported it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mr. Spiller. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? Councillor Kimber.
Could I, Chair, ask our planners, we've said this race, the trainings, is too far away from race courses. I mean, it's been there for a lot of years, and is this something that is a new feeling that it's too far away from the racecourses. I think probably the nearest one might be Exeter, Taunton, and those areas. So it was just I just wanted to query that point. Wincanton, yeah.
Do you want to answer that, please?
I'm not an expert on racehorses or horse racing, but I did think the same thing myself. I think if you're a coastal county, effectively you can only travel in one direction, and I can see that racehorses, being what they are, you wouldn't want to be transporting them long distances. It would upset the horses and so on and so forth. It can't be good for them. And I think along those lines, I can see why you wouldn't really want to be transporting racehorses big distance, as far as Somerset even. But as I say, I'm not an expert. So.
Okay, does he answer your question? Okay. Councillor Borwell.
Chair, I don't know if I should leave this to debate, but for my sins, I am very into racehorses. I have shares in racehorses, and racehorses can go 200 to 300 miles quite happily overnight and race the following day. They're sent over from Ireland quite often to race in the UK. I take issue with the fact that it's too far for racehorses to go. It's not. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a statement rather than question. But, Councillor, did you want to come back?
Does Councillor Kimball want to come back? No.
Okay. Is there any other technical questions? Okay. Right, I now open the debate to members. Who is wishing to speak first? Councillor Bower.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If this was lifting of the tie, I'd be against it. As it's keeping the tie and opening it up, I don't have any issue with it. But so I'm almost ready, propose to accept the recommendation. In fact, I will propose that we accept the recommendation. I've tipped over the edge. Thank you.
Proposal. Okay, do we have a seconder? Do we have anyone else wishing to speak?
Councillor Williams.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah. I noticed that in this application that looks like the owner's accommodation could also be used as a holiday let. Isn't that used by the owner currently as their main residence? Or is it?
It's not owner's accommodation. It's referred to as owner's accommodation. I think it means the person managing or running it's the principal dwelling running the racehorse business. But it's not the owner's accommodation in that sense.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Williams?
It does.
Any other questions for the case officer? Okay. If there's no more deliberation and members are satisfied they have heard the entire presentation and debate, I will seek a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? 2. No abstentions. What was the numbers? For members of the public watching from home, that was voted in favour of the officer's recommendation, 8 votes for and 2 against. Thank you very much. Right, members, we now take item 5F on the agenda, application number PFUL 2023-01286, 9 to 12, land west of Toby's Close, Portland, and that's for the erection of one dwelling. I now invite Catherine Trevitt, a council officer, to introduce this item. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Yes, this application relates to full planning permission for the erection of a single dwelling at land to the west of Toby's Close in Portland. The application site is situated to the east of Western Road within the southwestern corner of Toby's Close. Or bear with me a moment, I'm just going to change my pointer. Hang on a second. There we go, that's better. Within the southwest of Toby's Close, which is a range of bungalows just to the northeast of the site here. You can see here an aerial block plan, very badly edged in red actually, showing just the grassed area of this application site. Now this scheme has been brought to Planning Committee given the Portland Town Council concerns regarding the neighbourhood plan policy regarding sites of open space value and how this site might contribute to those sites of open space value within Portland, which I will discuss further on. Here's the proposed location plan and block plan, and you can see the intended single-storey bungalow-style dwelling is going to go in the southwest corner of that site to enable space around that kind of northeastern edge of the plot of land to provide some distance and retain amenity to the bungalows both to the north and to the east. Here's the intended site plan and floor plan, again, just focusing on the bungalow, how it will be built up to the western and southern boundaries of the application site, an intended kind of external amenity area, as well as a bike store. There is no provision for vehicular or pedestrian access for this site. And you can just see here the 2-bedroom floor plan layout of the proposed bungalow. Here's the proposed elevations. There's 2 sets just showing the use of the boundary screening actually in terms of the extent of the bungalow that you will and won't see basically along the top line, and then the proposed line just showing internally what the bungalow will look like within that boundary screening. It's very much in style with the bungalows that are right next to this site at Toby's Close. In terms of space standards, this proposal does comply. It's quite a tight plot, but actually when you look at the aerial plan, which I'll bring up again in a moment, the plots within the surroundings are all of various types and tenure, scale, and actually this will conform with some of the smaller plots that are within the area. And then just reflecting on that again, the plot size and scale here, you can see that it's relatively the same kind of scale as some of these bungalow plots just adjacent, as well as actually being larger than some of these plots here, which actually face onto Western Road, but it's very much an urban area. This is a photo showing the access off of Western Road. In terms of there is access to be gained for emergency services in terms of an ambulance needing to attend the site. In terms of the fire brigade, they would consider the use of sprinklers for the building, and that would fall within the building regulations legislation. Here's a photo moving up from that lane photo that I've just shown you, moving towards the site. So you can see here that we're starting to move towards that grassed area. There's a series of private garages on the left-hand side, and then on to the right, there is various residential gardens, which provide actually quite a large extent of open area and view on the other side of this pathway. There's also a public right-of-way. Well, there's a couple of public right-of-ways, actually, which go along here, but also seemingly cross this land to the south here, but will not be directly affected as a result of this application. Here's just a photo showing the scale of dwellings that are actually to the east backing on from Western Road, and the private garages here, or should I say to the west, on the east of Western Road. There we go. This is just a photo of that grassed area application site. So as you can see, not particularly well used. It's kind of left unkempt, I think, for the majority of the year. However, there are some photos in the winter kind of showing it more mown. It's a bit of an oddity in that it does kind of appear as the leftovers of where that Toby's Close development actually was carried out. However, you know, we have to accept it has been left, and obviously this is its current appearance. This is just some photos that were taken in the earlier part of the year. So, yeah, basically just showing the grass cut and the light levels, etc. Now, I wanted to just touch on that concern about about how this scheme kind of is potentially contrary to the Portland Neighbourhood Plan and that specific policy about the sites of open space value. Now, the application site is down here in the left-hand corner of the screen here. It's not specifically listed within the pretext or the policy of that open space value policy. The open spaces that are listed are the ones at Furlands, Greenways at the top here, and also Haylands, which is also in the vicinity here. And they all they're much larger, they weave in and amongst each other, and you can connect when you're moving through that public space, see that green infrastructure, which kind of takes you through, which is the spirit of that policy. Now, obviously, it's for us as a local authority to consider the harm and the impact from the loss of that area which is open space at the moment, although very small and not really visually linked or, you know, can't be argued, I don't think, to be part of that wider green network. However, that is for the members to consider in the terms of this application. But I go back to the point where it's kind of considered a bit of an oddity, actually, and actually on its own, I think you get greater amenity value when actually looking across this much larger open space at the rear of residential dwellings, given the extent of views and the distance that this land covers. So therefore, in terms of the loss of public open space, obviously I've just discussed that, and we consider that it does contribute limited amenity value, limited biodiversity gain in terms of that, and doesn't seem to visually connect with other much larger and swathes of green infrastructure that weave in and around the greater area in that location. We consider that the impact on the character of the area and the setting of the conservation areas is acceptable, reflects other built development and materials in the area. We consider that the impact on residential amenity is acceptable. There have been no concerns raised in terms of direct impact to neighbours either side of the application site. And we consider, in terms of highways and parking, we acknowledge there is a lack of vehicle access, but it's not considered to have an adverse impact on highway safety or parking in the area, and obviously will encourage more sustainable modes of travel, given it is within that defined development boundary in the urban area. And obviously there are other dwellings, including Toby's Close, just to the northeast, which do not have direct vehicular and parking area. Toby's Close actually has a parking courtyard to the southeast. Therefore, we're looking to recommend approval of this application subject to conditions. There has been updates to the conditions through the committee update sheet in regards to a construction management plan to be agreed pre-construction, just clarifying the removal of permitted development rights, so removing proposals for any roof extensions, etc., again to reduce impact to neighbouring amenity, removal of PD rights for Class A of the permitted development legislation, which means any extensions they would wish to build to that property would require planning permission, just so we control the level of amenity that is available to that property. And also that prior to commencement, we seek to protect the two existing mature trees which are on a strip of land just to the south of the application site. Although they're not protected and they're not within the conservation area, they do bring amenity value to the area, and so we would wish to protect them. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Katrina. Okay. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that presentation. I did have concerns because of the density of Toby's Close and the other houses and homes around there. I'm a little concerned that the house doesn't have a parking space. And again, that's just adding to the problems of Portland. I mean, that around the many streets in Top Hill and Underhill, it's very, I mean, the population tells us daily about this concern. So I am a concern there. I wonder if you could enlighten me a bit more against the neighbourhood plan. And and the other question I want to ask is, should every dwelling we build have a parking space? I always took it that it was about 1.4. Perhaps I've been a bit old rules.
Thank you, Councillor Kimber. Go back to you, Katrina, to answer that.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, in terms of the parking space, we just reflect on what I've previously said in the presentation, that actually it's very much part and parcel of the area, that there aren't, there are several properties in the vicinity without parking ability direct to their property. No, they don't have to provide a parking space for the dwelling. And obviously it's for our consideration as to whether there is associated harm as a result of not doing that. Was there a query about the neighbourhood plan? Yeah, so it's just reflecting on that, again, as previously mentioned, the sites of open space value, and how, that does not preclude it to being developed upon. It's for us to consider if there is obviously harm, and if that is then contrary to the neighbourhood plan. And for the reasons as I've described within the presentation, we do not feel that it is contrary to the general policy of the Portland neighbourhood plan, or considerably reduce open space within the area to the detriment of the public space, basically, and amenity.
Does that answer your question? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Are there any other technical questions? Okay. I now open the debate to members. Who wishes to speak? Councillor Borwell.
Thank you, Chair. Just a passing comment. You said that the area of grass looked unkempt. I think you'll find that half of Bridport looks exactly the same because of our mowing policy. So I think that was a little bit, I'm disregarding that a bit. But other than that, Chair, I can't see any problems with this particular application. No vehicle access, if they accept that, that's fine. I can't see a problem with it. So being bold, I'm going to propose that we accept the recommendation to approve. Thank you.
Yes, we'll do. Can I clarify that your proposal is also subject to reference to the update sheet?
Yes, Chair, and the conditions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a proposal on the table. Do we have a seconder? So, Councillor Clayton. Okay. No, he seconded.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. No, okay. Sorry. Do you wish to speak?
Yeah, one of it was just a comment about the open space. On Portland, a lot of the estates do have bits of green tagged onto the end, and that's part of the character of the open space on Portland. And I know you're saying that that one wasn't particularly defined in our neighbourhood plan, but it was just for members to know that a lot of the estates on Portland are like, and I know you know that, so I'm not teaching you to think, but I'm just saying that's part of the character of Portland, is that there's bits of grass on the end of rows of houses. And also, I was going to second the proposal, but it must have those conditions, because I was concerned about the fire safety with the the fire engine, because we just had a fire on Portland yesterday in one of the little cottages. So it would be for that we do have the one about the trees are really protected, because builders can sometimes all of a sudden accidentally on purpose pull a tree down, and we have very few trees on Portland, and for the sprinklers to be in the bungalow. I think those are really two important things, because if it's a bungalow, it's more than likely that there would be older people who will be living in bungalows. I'm not being judgmental, but that's the demographics of a lot of bungalows, especially on Portland. So I just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Cocking. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? If there's no more deliberation and members are satisfied they have heard the entire presentation and debate, I will now take a vote by show of hands. All those in favour?
Williams is a bit late, a bit tardy.
Tardy. No. Right. Okay, those against? For the benefit of the members of the public viewing from home, that particular application has been carried by a vote of 9 for and 2 against. Thank you. Right, the final application for the day. I understand that my vice chairman is now going to leave. And because of that, I will be seeking a temporary vice chairman. And I'd like to propose Councillor Paul Kimber to stand in. Have I got a seconder? Yeah, okay. Williams, all those in favour? Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So that's Paul's instructions.
Paul's instructions, okay.
Thank you.
That's all right, okay. See you next. Oh, don't forget, you're running the committee in October. Oh, welcome to the top chair. Okay, we're now taking item 5G on the agenda, application number PFUL 2023-02025, and that's for the Scout Hall, Granby Close, Weymouth, DT4 0SR. And that's to replace the incumbent Scout Hall. I now invite Katrina Trevor, the Council Officer, to introduce this item. Over to you, Katrina.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this application is to replace the existing Scout Hall utilised by the Weymouth West Air Scout Group at Granby Road, Weymouth. The application is brought to Planning Committee because the application site is within Dorset Council land ownership only. No objections have been raised to this scheme. Here is the application site here to the west of Radipole Lane. Bear with me a moment. There we go. To the west of Radipole Lane and to the north of Granby Close here. It's very much set within its own designated area, being fenced off with a number of trees around the perimeter, and is used very well by the existing community. The Weymouth West Air Scout Group sought to extend the existing building, which I will show you in a moment, but on the basis of advice, they were actually advised that actually there was limited life in the existing Scout Hall as remaining, which is why they've now proposed to come in with a much better facility to serve the Scouts. So here's just the aerial view of the application site, so you can see the existing Scout Hall on the grassed area within the perimeter of the existing fencing here of the site. Here's the intended floor plan, so you can see how it seeks to enlarge the existing facility and provide more accessibility in the building, which has been key to the redesign, as well as further storage, given that they actually obtain some storage from a shipping container presently. And again, here's just reflecting on the existing and proposed floor plans. So you can see how the overall facility will improve. Now, the only comment that we had in relation to this application was some concern by the crime prevention team at Dorset Police regarding this very small part of undercover area here in the southern corner of the building. However, on the basis that there will be a number of CCTV cameras incorporated throughout the site will retain the boundary fencing, and also, given that it's completely surrounded by residential dwellings, there will be a strong extent of natural surveillance of the site included as well. This has overcome that initial concern by the crime prevention team. Here's the existing elevations of the existing Scout Hall. You can see very utilitarian, very basic, and unfortunately getting to the end of its life. And this is the proposed bespoke Scout Hall that's now to be seen on the site. Far more of a visual improvement while securing that extra storage and storage accessibility, a larger actual hall part for the activities for the Scouts as a result. Here's just some photos of the existing Scout Hall within that enclosed area. So you can see very basic construction. You can see here also the shipping container currently in situ to provide extra storage. They have an existing large grassed area for their use anyway, and obviously this will be retained. And further photos. This just shows the access off of Granby Close up to the Scout Hall here, and the surrounding area. It's well spaced, there's no direct impact on neighbours. So in terms of neighbour amenity, the proposal is considered to be acceptable. The main issues, principle of development, we would fully support this as a replacement of a community facility, a very well used facility for the Scout group and beyond. It is within the main DDB. The Scout group encourage more sustainable modes of transport and access to actually utilise the site and encourage parents to ensure that children either walk or cycle, etc., to the site, and instill that very regularly within newsletters and information home. The impact on visual amenity, this is considered to be a vast improvement in terms of visual amenity and a much nicer looking building, whilst obviously obtaining that extra space that's very much needed. As I mentioned, impact on residential amenity is acceptable given it's well spaced and the limited impact height and siting of the building. And in terms of highways, there's no proposed changes to how the site is accessed or parking arrangements, and the highways team have no objections to this scheme. Given the extent of support also for the application by various local ward members as well as neighbours and other consultees, there is a recommendation for approval subject to conditions. We've added in some extra conditions again on the committee update sheet in terms of any private functions that are non-Scout Association functions, including amplified music and microphones, shall cease by 2300 hours, given the proximity to residential neighbours. We want to ensure that the cycle parking facilities are implemented as requested by the Highways team. And also we would request that details of the air source heat pump are agreed, because again, this could have environmental impact if the right model is not put in and given the close proximity to neighbours. So there we go. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina. Okay, we've now got a public speaker. I invite Gary Clothier, applicant's representative, to address the committee. Gary, I do apologise for the long wait, but over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Excuse me. As the Group Scout leader of Weymouth West Air Scout Group, I would like to take the opportunity to outline the benefits to the local community the new building will deliver. Weymouth West have supported generations of children by delivering a scouting programme since the late 70s from our current headquarters. At the time, the original building offered a seismic change for the Cubs and Scouts. I know, as I was one of the youth members who moved from the previous premises in Old Parish Lane. We now wish to build a new headquarters that will provide a safe and nurturing environment for children and young people that support them through the challenges of today's society. As a Scout group, we pride ourselves in being fully inclusive, integrating all children into our established scouting sections from 6 years of age to adulthood. Our current building falls short of entirely achieving this. We currently have no suitable wheelchair access into and around the building, no disabled toilet and washing facilities. We don't have the desired breakout rooms to allow a smaller number of youth sessions to support those with neurodiversity issues that would benefit from a calming environment. The existing office is cramped, making it difficult for leaders to prepare their exciting programme and to have confidential discussions with parents and carers regarding their children. The main hall limits the number of children we can safely and comfortably accommodate. Our existing store cannot hold the large amount of camping equipment necessary to accommodate all the children, young people and adults who wish to participate in the many camps and expeditions undertaken annually. All these issues can be resolved in the provision of the modern, environmentally sustainable building we have submitted. Scouting is valued by the community. Scouting is recognised as being a place where children can develop life skills, an understanding of nature, teamwork, as well as independence, and lifelong friendships in a safe environment. We currently have a large waiting list, which we wish to address with the expansion and creation of our sections, especially for the newest section, squirrels, so we can expand our scouting provision to the 4 to 6 year old age range. Our new building design will significantly contribute to the success of this. We also recognise that the new building will be a community asset and will be looking to expand community group usage. We already support the local radio club and other groups from outside scouting. The improved welfare and access facilities will mean more groups will be able to utilise the building. In conclusion, our Scout Hut needs the new headquarters to continue supporting our current and future children, to build on the previous success and ensure we can be fully inclusive and provide for the needs of all children, young people and adults. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Gary. Thank you. Spot on 3 minutes. I do appreciate that. I now call on Jo Language-Merritt to respond with any salient points you may wish to clarify. Oh, sorry, it is Katrina. To respond with any salient points you may wish to clarify.
Thank you. There's nothing further to add there, Chairman. as reflected before, this is a really important community facility and fully supported by local plan policy as well as national planning policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of a technical nature for the case officer? Councillor Ireland.
Yeah, it's probably more for my own interest, really. It's the extra condition and the update about the air source heat pump. It seems to me that's more of a building control type thing. Are we going to be going forward insisting on particular models for every single house? Surely that's any MCS accredited installer is going to follow the MCS rules. So is it really necessary? That's all. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Ireland. I'll hand you back to Katrina.
That condition was expressly asked for from the environmental health team in terms of noise impact to residential neighbours, because obviously there can be a noise element to them. And I presume that they wish to agree the model, so actually there isn't a likely impact to environmental protection later on. Thank you.
It's going to work. I've had an air source heat pump installed in my house. I didn't have to go through planning permission. And my neighbours are nearer than any of the neighbours here. And anyway, so.
Do we have any other technical questions? No. Fine. No. No one. Right. Who's first?
Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams. Councillor Weller.
Okay. No, we haven't moved to debate technical questions. No, that's what I'm saying. Okay, technical questions.
Councillor Weller.
Councillor Weller.
I'm sorry, I thought we'd moved into debate. Okay.
My apprentice vice chairman is sick.
Yes, Sir.
Okay, then. So I now open the debate to members. And now, who's first? Okay, Councillor Weller.
Very much, Chairman. I'd like to commend this application. The Scout Troop is a lively, vibrant and growing troop that badly needs the additional space for all of the reasons that Mr Clothier has stated. And I'd like to propose acceptance if anybody would like to second me.
Yeah.
Well, a proposal on the table. Have we got a seconder, please? Do you wish to say a few words?
I was just going to say, I think this looks a very, very good sustainable building, and I'm really pleased that it's going to be fully inclusive and have the breakout rooms, which are very useful for younger members to go and have their few quiet moments. And I'm very happy to second the proposal and to preempt you, including all the conditions that have been laid down.
Thank you, Councillor William. Councillor Burwell.
Thank you, Chair. I see the air source heat pump, brilliant. I didn't see any solar panels. Did I miss them, or are there none in the application? Because they do tend to work very nicely together. Thank you.
Apologies for that. Yes, they are shown on the proposed plans, and therefore, will be implemented. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I am also in favour.
Anyone else wish to say anything?
Well, this one's with the Angels.
The Angels. Okay. All right. If there's no more deliberation and members are satisfied they've heard the entire presentation and debate, I will now vote by show of hands. All those in favour? Thank you, members. That is unanimous. For members of the public at home, that has been accepted unanimously by the committee. That concludes all of the planning applications for this evening. You'll be very pleased to hear. We've got two more items on the agenda. Item 6, urgent items. I have no prior notification of any items of business which is considered to be urgent pursuant to Section 100B 4B of the Local Government Act 1972. I will now take item 7 on the agenda, exempt business. I have no prior notification of any item viewed as likely to disclose exempt information within the meaning of paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. Committee, member of the public, that concludes the meeting for today, and thank you for your endurance, and have a safe journey home. Thank you.